is the absolute deepest in 2024? We look at the core four conferences: ACC, Big 10, Big 12, the It Just Means More conference, right? That's what it's called. We are going to decide, with the help of you, the Tolos, which conference in 2024, not the best, not the top heaviest, not the one with the best two teams, but the deepest conference in 2024. Welcome into Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. He is Diesel. It is a hump day edition of Wire to Wire.
Yeah.
Diesel, not only is it hump day, it's upset picks day. That always gets us fired up. We've already got picks in on the text line. Just a little too early, though. You see that 34 minutes ago?
Boiling Spring Dave, you got to pump the brakes there, kid. You got to back off. We don't open these up until 4 p.m. Any entries before 4 o'clock do not count.
4 p.m. is the way is the open time. It's the tea time, if you will.
Yeah.
For the Upset Picks Challenge. Again, Dave, Boiling Springs, Dave, we appreciate you, but wait one more hour and we'll kick this thing off. We're doing a full segment at 4 p.m. Upset Picks Challenge. It begins today for week 1. We'll talk to Kelley for the ratings in the show today. We'll talk to Chris Phillips in the 5 o'clock hour. A jam-packed show coming your way. But Diesel, when you look at the core four conferences, we know that a lot of these conferences have teams that rule the conference at the very top that don't allow anyone else to really be competitive. Those teams put a chokehold, if you will, on the conference, and that's fair. That's plausible. We can determine that. However, that's not the question. The question is, which conference is the deepest? I know everyone right off the bat will say, let me back up. Not everyone. 90% of people off the bat will say the SEC is by far the deepest, and I appreciate that. Kyle on the Facebook streams already chimed in and said not even close, SEC. I did figure that would be the common answer for this topic. But I have a list of all four conferences, core four conferences, Diesel, with the teams involved, and I want to get to the bottom of it in this segment to find out if the SEC truly is the deepest conference.
Well, if I learned anything from Sir Rod Stewart, it's that the first cut is the deepest. Believe it or not, Sheryl Crow didn't write that song.
Oh.
Don't be giving Sheryl Crow credit for that. But yeah, the first cut is the deepest. This is going to be an interesting conversation because, a lot of people's first thoughts will say, oh, it's got to be the SEC, right? Because the bottom half of the SEC could beat the middle of most of these conferences. Well, that's ultimately what we're going to discuss.
And here's what's fascinating. There's an entire conversation, Diesel, that's to be had that can spawn from this topic.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about it every single year. What do we talk about when bowl season comes around? ACC versus SEC. We've seen years where the SEC has not done well during bowl season. That is a completely different topic for a different day in terms of, do bowl records versus each conference matter? However, when you look at the deeper conferences, I do believe that postseason play is a factor when you talk about a mid-level SEC team versus a mid-level ACC or even a higher-level ACC team. Those matchups are a factor, in my opinion. Do they mean everything? No. Do they determine which conference is better? Absolutely not. But in my opinion, they do have a small weight in determining which is the deepest. Again, we all know that the SEC is loaded, but when you look at the depth, is there a conference, let's start with this, Diesel, is there a conference depth-wise that you want to eliminate from the conversation? That way we can narrow down and find the true answer.
Yeah, the Pac-2. Let's eliminate those jokers.
That's rough. What is your beef with the Pac-2?
There's nothing left of them. They've withered down to a tiny little nub.
That's a good answer.
They're like the appendix of college football, right? There's really not much to them. They're just sitting back collecting that money and all those exit fees. They're getting rich off of that, my friend.
Not the 12, but the 2.
So here's something for you. Historically speaking, now we're looking forward thinking, right? People want to look in the past, but the question is, how are these conferences against each other historically.
Sure.
And I've got the numbers right here in front of me. Google, what a hell of a thing, right? It's really hard to find what it is you're actually looking for on Google these days because they've totally screwed that app up. But the ACC overall in interconference play have a record of 256 and 314. Only two of these, by the way.
By the way, it's a losing record.
Yeah, by the way, yeah. So they list the ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, Pac-12, and SEC. Obviously, the Pac-12 is gone, so that's a little bit of an asterisk next to that. But of all these conferences, Cole, only two have a winning record in interconference play. So the ACC overall, 256 and 314 against the Big 12, Big East, Big 10, Pac-12, and SEC. Some of these obviously have shifted and changed over the years. The Big 12, three of these conferences have a winning record. 210 and 207 against interconference play. The Big East, 119 and 144. The Big 10, 241 and 245. So the Big 10 has a losing record out of conference in its history. The Pac-12 had a 194 and 174 record, and the SEC 297 and 233. So doing the maths here, they are 64 games above 500 in interconference play. By far the best out of all these conferences. The now defunct Pac-12 had a 20 game above 500 record.
And again, I think that's a big factor. I don't think that's everything. I don't think that's the only determining factor in this equation, in this question, but I do think it is a big factor. 71307 is the text line. Start your text with the word fan if you want to weigh in on this conversation.
Oddly enough, the only conference that the SEC has a losing record against out of conference. Take a wild guess.
SoCon. Wrong.
They're not listed here. Out of the ACC, Big 12, Big East, Big 10, Pac-12, and themselves. So they just can't play themselves. What conference does the SEC have a losing record overall against?
Big 10.
It's the Big East.
Big East.
They have a 19 and 27 record overall against the Big East.
So not a lot of games, not a large sample size, right? But still, 19 and 27 is a losing record, to your point. If you look at the four, Diesel, the ACC, the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12, in terms of depth, being the deepest, would you agree with me that if we have to eliminate one, we eliminate the Big 12?
The Big 12 being the deepest?
No. In terms of trying to find the deepest, we're eliminating one. You know, we have four. Let's get down to three.
We're saying they're safe. Saying the Big 12, eliminating them here says the Big 12 is safe in this discussion.
No. Well, I guess if you look at it that way, I was just saying if you have the four, right, and you're trying to find the deepest, you eliminate the ones that you think off the bat aren't the deepest. So, in my opinion, I don't think the big this one's tough. I'm looking at it now again. I don't know. This is so hard. I would say most years the Big 10 is deeper than the Big 12. I would say out of the four, here's what I mean. Out of the four, the Big 12 is not anywhere close to the deepest. If we're trying to find the deepest, I would eliminate the Big 12.
Okay.
I don't think the Big 12.
I see what you're saying here. Yeah. So the Big 12, I think internally has the most parity of the Big Four conferences, of the Power Four, Core Four conferences.
Okay.
The Big 12 has the most parity. I think they have the most number of teams who could go out and win it and then could also challenge for a CFP spot this year. I'm not with you on the Big 12 though, saying that they are not the deepest. I think by far the shallowest is the ACC.
And that's what JB said on the stream.
By far the shallowest.
Those are my two.
Yeah, you got Clemson, Miami, Louisville right now are the three that look like, still look like possible contenders. Florida State, anything could happen, right? They could turn that season around and they could get it going from here on out, and they could be right back in the discussion by the end of the season. But there's really only three teams that I say, three teams that could challenge at this point for the ACC championship. two that could challenge for the college football playoff. I don't know that this is going to be a year where the ACC is a one-bid league into the CFP. I mean, could you imagine the rioting that would happen
Florida
in
State
the
has
ACC
a down
office?
Year. It could happen.
Yeah, but I mean, whoever finishes second in the ACC, it's probably going to be the loser of the conference championship game. In all likelihood, will get into the CFP.
Diesel, when you stack them up, the ACC versus the Big 12, and again, JB on the stream agreed with you. He said eliminate the ACC off the bat. The ACC and the Big 12 are the two that I'm deciding which to eliminate. You talk about Clemson, Florida State, Louisville being, some years they're really good, some years they're not, NC State. When you look at the Big 12, Utah's going to be good. I have Utah winning the conference. Mm-hmm. Outside of Utah, though, when it comes to legitimate contenders that can compete for the Big 12, I see Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Outside of Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Utah, do you see anybody else that can be competitive? Because I don't disagree. Kansas? You think, well, yeah, maybe so. So 4. So my question is, though, if you eliminate the ACC first over the Big 12, how many teams do you think? Like, is it that wide of a margin in your opinion?
Yeah,
I think big.
I think the ACC's got 3 legitimate contenders at this point. Florida State was unveiled and shown as wanting. Again, they could fix things, but we don't know. We operate with the information we have. I do think there are 3 legitimate contenders for the ACC, 4 contenders for the Big 12, because, I mean, we're not expecting Baylor to be much this year. Maybe Arizona. So that's a stretch to say 5. It's a stretch to say 5 to include Arizona. So I'm going to go with 4, but I'm not looking at UCF as a real contender.
I'm not either.
I'm not really looking at West Virginia as a real contender. I think they're a second tier in the Big 12 this year. So I'm going to say 4 for the Big 12, 3 for the ACC, 4 for the Big 12.
And you say 4 in terms of contending for the conference, right?
Contending for the conference, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm with you on 4 there. So I guess my point is 3 ACC, 4 Big 12. The difference isn't large, and I guess that you could argue, Diesel, on years, and it doesn't happen often, on years that the ACC is at its best, where Clemson's good, Duke's good, Florida State's good, Louisville's good, Miami, NC State, North Carolina, because North Carolina's been good the last few years. I do think there's more parity this year in the ACC, but I don't necessarily translate that parity into more contenders.
No.
So if your number's 4, I would go Clemson for sure as a contender. Miami, of course. I do think Louisville is a contender for me, and then Florida State, can they bounce back? I don't think they do, but they're not out of it completely. So I'm going to go 3, maybe 4 there. My point is the difference for me in the ACC and the Big 12 when it comes to depth is not much. Obviously, you and I would eliminate both conferences before we get to the Big 10 and the SEC, but I don't think there's a ton of difference between the two talking about the ACC and the Big 10. Or excuse me, the Big 12. Now, the Big 10 and the SEC would be the 2 that remain, Diesel. Obviously, everyone's answer for the majority, for the most part, is going to be the SEC. And I don't disagree. However, the years at the Big 10, Diesel, when the Big 10's good, I don't know that you can find a deeper league. Iowa's
5 ranked teams going into this season.
Sure, Iowa's, they're hit or miss. Maryland's not good. Michigan, won the national championship. Michigan State's down. We know that, but they used to be good. Maybe they'll be good again. Nebraska, hit or miss.
This year.
Northwestern, you have Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. Those are 3 ranked teams, like you said. UCLA, they're down. The Trojans of USC, they're good. And then Washington, a national championship or a college football playoff appearance. Wisconsin, I just think that the depth when it comes to the Big 10, when they're at their best, it compares. But my point is, while I will say the Big 10 has years where they're deeper, consistently year in and year out, it's hard to argue against the SEC. However, There was a stretch, Diesel, when there was still divisions, East and West of the Southeastern Conference. The East was not good. The West literally carried the conference for several years, and outside of Georgia in the East, there weren't many good teams.
Well, you can look at any conference and look at a top, middle, bottom, right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily dividing the conference in thirds. It's just imagining how many teams do we think year in and year out could compete for the conference championship. With the Big Ten, you got Ohio State. Now you got Oregon, Penn State, Southern Cal, Michigan, Iowa. That's a big top third of this conference.
Sure.
And then some years Purdue will just pop up and be way better than we think they're going to be. And Wisconsin always seems like that program that should. And then Washington, now they just lost head coach Kalen DeBoer to Alabama and the SEC. But if Kalen DeBoer was still at Washington, that would be another ranked team in that conference to start the season. They would start with 7 ranked teams. Think about that. That's a huge chunk of the top 25 starting with 7. So, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Washington. Do they have the culture to weather changing head coaches again? Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
419 texter says, asking the question wrong, how many SEC teams compete for the ACC title and vice versa? That tells the true measure.
Well, texter, you want to look at it from the perspective of what if the SEC with their current rosters, current finances, current head coaches, current media payouts, what would they do if we just plucked one of those teams out of the SEC and we plopped them in the ACC? Well, yeah, because you'd have an additional $40-50 million a year in resources. But as I've always asked the question, and I've always been fascinated by this, and this may eventually play out with the remaining Pac-2 members, what happens when you've got a team and you got a program that's used to a $50 million advantage in resources every single year, and you take that away from them? How are they going to react? How are they going to deal with that lack of resources? So
let's take Arkansas, for example.
Well, so if you wanted to take Arkansas out and you wanted to plop them right into the ACC, all of a sudden, boom, there goes $40 million a year.
That's my point.
So that drastically changes what Arkansas can do. It drastically changes what they can afford to do as far as recruiting and NIL opportunities and all these things, right? So all of this stuff is relative. All this stuff changes. So if you were to take, I've always said, hey, if you were to take a Memphis and stick them in the SEC and give them $55+ million a year, watch and see what they could do with it. Yeah. People always want to say, well, if you put a G5 in a big conference, they're going to struggle. Yeah, they're going to struggle.
For a few years.
For a couple of years. Yeah, they're going to struggle because they got a smaller stadium. They got a smaller fan base.
Facilities.
They haven't had the resources that these other schools have enjoyed for decades. But you give them time to get their footing underneath them, and we're going to see that as a case study with both Cincinnati and Houston, and BYU, of course, going into the Big 12. We're going to see them have a sudden jump in resources, and we'll see what happens over the coming years.
So for my Arkansas example, Diesel, to your point, I don't know that, and again, going back to the texters text just a few moments ago, I don't know that you could pluck Arkansas out of the SEC. We're talking about a lower tier SEC team, right, who went 4-8 in 2023. I don't believe if you plucked a lower tier Arkansas or Mississippi State out of the Southeastern Conference and plugged them in the ACC, I don't just think they would automatically be competing for the top of the conference in the next 3 years. I really don't.
I think in certain position groups, they're certainly better off than the middle part of the ACC. So would I say in Arkansas would immediately challenge for the ACC crown? No,
I agree.
I think they would still be behind talent-wise, composite talent-wise. They'd be behind Clemson. They'd be behind Florida State. I know what you're thinking. I know they just lost to Georgia Tech, but Florida State does have a ton of talent all over the field. Miami has a ton of talent. But I would say Arkansas would probably be on par right now with a Louisville as far as talent goes. And then what happens over the course of 5 to 10 years when you take away the resources, when you take away the amount of eyeballs that are watching the game, all of a sudden Arkansas is not getting those vastly superior recruiting classes that everybody, I wish I could put an echo in my voice, vastly superior recruiting classes that everybody thinks they get just because they're in the SEC. Go look at the recruiting rankings. It shows you exactly where Arkansas is. It shows you exactly where they would stack up with the ACC. You look at their ratings, their average recruit rankings, and you get to say, oh, well, that would put them at this position in the ACC.
You know, before we move off of Arkansas and I know we have to run and go to break, but when you see the sport of basketball trying to emerge at that school, Diesel, with Calipari now being the head coach, we know about the Tyson money, right? The NIL opportunities. Well, I'm curious, and maybe this is a question for Chris Phillips later of SEC Unfiltered. Why isn't football tapping into that? Like, you would think that they would be, I'm not saying completely sell out a roster from Tyson Chicken, but I am saying that 2, 3, 4 dudes, you would assume that with the NIL opportunities that Arkansas has with those deep, deep pockets, you would think it would make a difference for them to be able to at least compete for the middle of the pack and not be 4-8 and their head coach be on the hot seat in 2024.
So I looked at the Arkansas. Now, this is just one tiny little piece of data, right? You can't necessarily infer a ton from this, but looking at Arkansas's 2024 class, they had an average rating per player. By the way, they were 15th in the conference of 88.79.
88.7. Okay.
88.79 with a total number of points of 219.12. Looking at the ACC, that would put them between Florida State and North Carolina for 4th place in the ACC.
Okay.
Not by much. I mean, they would be about a point above North Carolina as far as average.
How far is 4 from 7 in the ACC? Do you see that?
Yeah. So the average rating for 4th place 2024 recruiting class, 87.8 for North Carolina. 7th place is 87.39.
That is not
a fraction of a point.
Right. So that's not a big difference.
And there's not a significant drop off until you get to 15th, which would be Virginia, Boston College, SMU.
So it's tight in the middle of that pack.
It is.
It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
I just find it fascinating when you talk about plugging and playing them. I just don't always think it would be as easy as some may think.
When we come back, Cole, the NCAA has proposed a pretty big rule change for the 2024-2025 school year. What do we think they're up to here? Do we think this is a necessary rule change, which would mean you and I are behind it, or do we think it's kind of the NCAA grasping at relevance, grasping at trying to maintain control? We'll get to that next. It's about time the NCAA has gotten a hold of all this insanity, the transfer portal of NIL. Totally trust them, right?
Wait, they've gotten a hold of it?
No, well, they're proposing.
Oh,
They're going to talk about it and see what happens. So
that's comforting.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes me feel really good about everything.
Just released, the NCAA has proposed eliminating the 15-day April transfer window in favor of a single 30-day transfer window in December. Big old change coming to football, right? Because it's the spring window. College coaches, they don't know who's going to be on their roster until all of this dust settles, and then they've got to go figure out how to piece this together. It's like telling them to pause on everything they're trying to install because you don't know if the guys that you're teaching this to are even going to be here come week 1 of your season.
It's fascinating. So they're proposing eliminating the 15-day period.
Yes.
And just making it 30 days?
So they currently have no. So
okay.
The December window is 30 days currently.
Right.
There's already a 30-day transfer window in December. There's also a 15-day April transfer window, and they're proposing eliminating the 15-day April transfer window. So here's how this goes down, and all this is reported on ESPN.com. If approved, this would take effect for the 2024-2025 school year. So not this season, obviously, but next season. It would certainly affect, Cole, anybody who is attempting to transfer at the end of this season. So any transfer-minded people, they would have to get their transfers in December of 2024. There's no April 2025 transfer window. So this is what's written on ESPN.com. The December transfer window under this proposal will open on the Monday after conference title games and extend from December 9th through January 7th. The NCAA says they're focusing on roster stability for student athletes and their programs in releasing this proposal. The Division I Council will meet in October to determine whether or not it will adopt the proposal, which reduces the number of days that a student athlete can transfer from 45 to 30. So now they only have one window, and they've got to get it in December, starting just after conference title games. And they're going to make a special little caveat for players who are competing in the expanded 12-team college football playoff or in the FCS playoffs. They would get a 5-day exemption to enter the transfer portal after their season has concluded. So you would know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, 5 days after your season is over, here's who I think is still going to be on my roster.
Yeah, there's only one window.
Right.
If it were to pass is what you're saying.
Correct.
No other opportunity in the spring.
Correct.
Okay.
So to let you know how big this thing has gotten, Cole, in 2023-24, the portal cycle, I think this includes both the 45-day December or 30-day December window and the 15-day April window, saw 2,700 FBS scholarship transfers. 2,700 players transferred in the total 45-day window. 900 of them transferred in the month of April. So not an insignificant amount. That's about a third transferred in April. So just consider how many coaches are trying to put a roster together going into spring camp and then going into summer camp.
Yeah. I don't know
with the roster up in the air.
I don't know how the coaches feel, Diesel, but I would just assume, and again, I know it's always not the best thing to assume, but I would assume that and you disagree if you want to here. Tell me if you push back. I would assume that 90% of coaches would be in favor. 100%. What does it benefit you to have it if you're a head coach? The only thing that I can think, well, no, if you have that late window.
The only thing I can see is
it
gives you time to evaluate your roster over the course of the spring.
Now, undergraduates can still undergraduates, this is for undergrad, grad transfers could still transfer at any time. So I'm with you. I guess it does help you evaluate.
I assume. I don't know. The ruling, the proposal here doesn't mention anything about grad transfers.
I'm pretty sure that grad transfers are
exempt from that.
Exempt from across the board.
So the question, Cole, is do you believe that a move like this is necessary for the stability of the sport? Or do you believe that it's unfairly restrictive of player movement? And to your point here, before you answer that question, while you're thinking about it, to your point, why would a coach want an April window? Maybe they get to evaluate their roster and say, ooh, I really need a solid number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So now I've got a chance to go out and get it, right? I've done my recruiting. I know who's signed. I know who's coming in. We got more time to evaluate all those guys, more time than we had already. And then we get to say, oh, we still have these deficiencies. We can still go back and plug the holes. But at the same time, you're also creating more holes in your roster by leaving that window open in April. And who knows, maybe your wide receiver 1 says, peace out, coach. I've done really well here at Mississippi State. I think I'm a Big Ten starter, so I'm going to go to Oregon or I'm going to go to Ohio State because they're throwing cash at me, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. I would say, Diesel, when you talk about that April window, I remember we talked to Shane Beamer about this past spring in Spartanburg. The only really benefit is to build some depth at some positions that you're uncertain about. But we talked about this a few months ago. Who are you getting in April that's going to be an impact player? I think closing that April window puts more pressure on coaches. Maybe it puts more pressure on them on the front end, but to your point, on the back end, when the spring does come around, they're not having to fill and plug holes. If you're a team that's having to fill and plug holes come April, I don't know that you're going to be competitive anyway.
Well, have you ever seen the cartoons where, you got the little Dutch boy trying to plug the hole in the dam? As soon as he plugs that one, another hole springs up over there. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what that's my analogy of what the April transfer portal window does. You think you got, boom, all right, I got that hole filled, and all of a sudden, now my running back is leaving. Oh, okay, crap. Well, now my wide receiver is leaving. Oh, dang, now my center is leaving. They're all going somewhere else for NIL money. So I think it's critical for the stability of the sport and for the stability of maybe the health and for the digestive health of coaches all over college football, the heart health of coaches all over college football. These athletes are still going to have a 30-day window in the month of December to enter their name in the transfer portal. So I don't really look at it as unfairly restrictive. Do you?
No, I don't look at it as unfairly restrictive. I think the less window of opportunity you have, obviously you're going to see – you may see more transfers on the front end, but on the back end, I just think it's got to be completely frustrating for a coach, Diesel, that come April, they're having to worry about another opportunity that players could leave the program. Spring practice concludes, and you still don't even have a complete team as you head into the summer. Because remember, that window is after spring practice, right? If it's after spring practice, even after you conclude the spring game, you don't even know if the roster is going to be set. You don't even know if there's going to be changes again. The majority of the players that enter the portal, to your point, are within that first window, and I don't think you would see necessarily more players transfer on the front end, but I do think it would create a lot more stability. The fans may not notice a big difference, but from the coach's standpoint, I'd be all for it.
Okay, so the NCAA, they can propose whatever rules they want to, right? And this kind of circles back around to our conversation a couple weeks ago about all these rulings and all these rules, that are being challenged by student athletes. Mm-hmm. How long? And by how long, I mean the answer is literally a microsecond, right? How long until this gets challenged in court? How long until some player advocacy group gets together and says, well, you can't just unilaterally choose to restrict our student athletes and our constituents here in their transfer. You can't slow them down. You can't stop them from transferring. You can't restrict the amount of time that they have. So I think that this rule, you bring it down, that's great. But until we have a situation where there's collective bargaining between the NCAA and a college players association, any rule like this they try to implement is just going to be seen as unfairly restrictive.
Yeah.
I always look at things like what do we think should happen in a just and righteous world? And then what will actually happen, right? There's always negotiation. Everybody likes to unilaterally make decisions.
Somebody's going to be upset about
but
it.
It's going to upset a lot of people, and they're going to challenge things in court almost immediately.
People will make promos about it on the radio. Well, this isn't fair. This shouldn't be happening. All right. In the very next segment, we're going to go back to the stream. I was in a conversation during the break with the Creation 864. I want to get back to that because it was a good, fascinating conversation. And you know what? Some things in the chat don't need to be brought to the airways, but this one, it's too good not to. So we'll bring it back up. Dive into the chat. Your thoughts as well. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. Diesel, sometimes we have comments on the stream, text messages, and what do you and I do sometimes? We take the high road. We ignore them. We just keep on keeping on. We go about our business, about our show, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, at least for this segment. The Creation 864, I'll give you credit. You got under my skin in the stream. I was going back and forth with you, so I will give you credit on getting under my skin today. But I hope you have not gone away. I hope you are still here because the Creation 864, we appreciate you being in the stream. He asked the question, anyone think Clemson can beat Georgia? Jokingly, I responded and said Dabo does. And he said, no way Dabo thinks that, right? Of course, the coach is going to believe it. So then the Creation 864 on YouTube says, I just don't understand the Clemson hype. They just went 9-4. My response, Diesel, I don't know, maybe because they've won 2 national championships. And he says, well, they were 10 years ago, 9-4. They're not recruiting. How did DJ work out? I think because South Carolina sports are so bad and we're only holding on to Clemson. I said, look, I'm confused. Maybe Clemson has hype because we live, I don't know, in their backyard. They have been really good over the last 15 years. And no, you're not going to hit on every single quarterback. If you don't, Creation God 864, if you don't understand the Clemson hype, I don't know what to tell you other than Dabo Swinney's going 170-43 in his time at Clemson, other than 2 national championships within the last 10 years. I don't know if you're a Georgia fan. I don't know who you're a fan of, but please don't go away. Please don't comment and run in the YouTube section. I want to hear back. I just don't understand your questioning about why Clemson has all the hype. I don't know. Maybe because we live and cover sports an hour from Clemson.
Well, first of all, their national championships were 8 and 6 years ago. They were not 10 years ago. Neither of them of their modern recent national championships was 10 years ago. So, number one, I could tell you're trolling at that point. It was 10 years ago. You know when those national championships were, when you started typing that out. So, Dabo feels like he's got the roster to go out there and win every game he's got. And he's got a very, very talented roster. Let's not ever forget. Let's not ever pretend that Dabo Swinney has forgotten how to recruit. He still gets highly ranked recruiting classes. Is he right there in the top 5 the way he was when they were winning national championships? No, but they're sitting right outside the top 10, right in there, just inside the top 10. Are they getting transfer guys to plug those holes? 4 and 5 star guys who are disingenuous, like upset about their playing time at Ole Miss? No, but Dabo Swinney feels, and this is a coach who has national championship pedigree. He feels as if his talent evaluation is good enough that he has a roster that can go out and do it.
And Diesel, you know me. I have been very critical of Dabo Swinney on this show. I would always encourage fans to, yes, be a fan, but also see things realistically. And Creation 864, I understand that you may hate Clemson or may despise them or maybe a Georgia fan, whatever it may be. But the only thing I can tell you is, look, and since Dabo Swinney's there, yeah, they play in the ACC, but in 2011, 10-4, 2012, 11-2, 11-2, 10-3, 14-1, 14-1, 12-2, 15-0, 14-1, 10-2, 10-3, 11-3. Well, that's why there's Clemson hype, Creation 864. I don't know if you just moved to the area. I don't know if you're from New York because you have a Giants logo. You're going to have Clemson hype in South Carolina in the upstate for a very long time. Newsflash, it's an hour away. He says, oh, how hard is it to look good in the ACC? The ACC is not the best conference. I'll agree with you there. But when you dominate from 2011 and you have won, I don't know, 7 of the last 12 ACC titles, you're not just getting by in that conference. You dominated the conference. What else are you supposed to do, right? Are you supposed to file a letter that to raise $8 billion? I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, to get out of the ACC, to go play in the SEC so that you can prove people like you wrong? I'm just telling you, they beat Alabama twice. They've beaten SEC teams. I've seen them play at the highest level. So to say, I don't understand the hype, well, I don't understand why you don't understand the hype. What else is there to say?
So he wants to know about the rankings. Again, I said they were top 5 when they were winning national championships. They're not top 5 anymore. 2023, they finished with the number 11 class. 2024, they finished with the number 11 class. So looking at the final AP poll of 2023, the 11th ranked team in the country had 3 losses. He's using that as some sort of a dig on Clemson. Oh, you've got these elite classes and you're losing 3 games. Guess what? The number 11 team in the country last year finished with 3 losses. So I would say that puts Clemson and Dabo Swinney right where they should be, given the level of talent that they are recruiting.
Did they have a bad year last year? Of course.
Yeah.
They had a bad year, 9-4, bad year, right? However, I think I would be okay with 9-4 being one of the worst years in a long, long time. Jacob in Spartanburg says, Cole, your Clemson fan is showing. Well, I 100% intend for it to. Again, I'm very, very unbiased at times. I've been very critical of Dabo Swinney. Diesel can tell you that. But I'm also going to tell you how I feel. I'm not going to be a phony and get on here and say, no, I don't hope, I really don't hope Clemson beats Georgia. I really hope it's a terrible game. And no, Clemson hasn't been. I'm going to tell you how I feel. And yes, sometimes the orange will come out. It will happen. And I don't want to just act as if it will never happen. Most times it don't. And again, Creation 864, you can't stay on subject. Lost to Duke by 21. Yeah, they lost to Duke last year. Down year, 9-4. But again, it's 1 year where you didn't win 10 games, and I just don't understand. You're a troll. You're a hater. Whatever you are, I love you. I appreciate you listening. But it's very simple why there's Clemson hype.
Texter wants to know, how do we see the standings for the Upset Picks Challenge? Well, Texter, you go to the Fan Upstate on Twitter. We posted a graphic a few days ago. I believe it was on Monday when we posted that graphic. And everyone who picked Georgia Tech over Florida State is currently in a tie for first place. There's 21 Tolos who picked Georgia Tech over Florida State in that week 0 round of the Upset Picks Challenge. They are all currently tied for first place with 10.5 points. But coming up next on the other side, we are just minutes away, 7 minutes away, as a matter of fact, from getting in your week 1 upset picks.
Do you have yours yet?
I do.
I did too.
I do. I'll explain who I looked at, what games I was interested in, and then ultimately we'll tell you who we are going with in week 1 of the Upset Picks Challenge, brought to you by Ingles. That's next on the Fan Upstate. I hope you Tolos who are just waking up from your hibernation of the college football offseason woke up a week ago and were paying attention a week ago when we allowed week 0 picks, because some of you are going to be behind the 8 ball. Some of you are going to be 10.5 points down because you didn't pay attention. We got a lot of picks, a lot of Tolos who got points in week 0 of the Upset Picks Challenge, brought to you by Ingles, and we thank them for their continued support of this show and sponsorship of this segment. To go down the leaderboard, as of right now, only one game last week actually hit and scored points, but congratulations to Clemson Oculus, Mike M., Brandon in Spartanburg, Reed Atkins, Ethan Reed, Amazon Guy, Buckeye Brian, Sheezy, Roger Carper, Tiger Pal Rachel, Fred Savage, Shane Barrett, Palmetto Buckeyes, Mike Main, Leprechaun of Lyman, MD75, Josh Pate, Jake Crane, John Dog, Will G, and last but not least, JD, all tied in a 21-way tie for first place. Cole, this tie, though, is going to be broken up in a big way. Here in week 1 of the Upset Picks Challenge. Now, if you're not familiar, if you're just now tuning in to sports radio because college football is a couple of days away, here's how this challenge works, okay? Your job is to look at all of the games being played this week and decide which game you think could be an upset, a betting underdog that you think could go out there and nab that outright upset over the betting favorite. Now, if you correctly call that, then you will get the points by which that team was an underdog added to your rolling tally over the course of the season. So, for example, those 21 Tolos now have 10.5 points. If they get another one right, they add that spread to the 10.5 points. Now, if they get this week wrong, they lose 1 point. You drop back down to 9.5. Those of you Tolos who took Georgia Tech over Florida State. And if you don't make a pick at all, which is not allowed, which we highly discourage you not being around to make your upset picks, you will lose 2 points. So you got to be here week in and week out, play, baby, making your picks. It is imperative. I am behooving you in the strongest possible language to be here week in and week out with your picks. Now, here's how you get your picks in. You text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan, and then give us your name, your game, and the spread. All of those pieces of information must be there. Your name, your game, and the spread. Any piece of that information is not there, that is an invalid pick. So you would text in and say 71307. Fan, Cole Bryson. I'm taking North Carolina plus 2.5 over Minnesota. If that's the score. If that's the spread. That's the format. You would say Cole Bryson, North Carolina plus 2.5 versus Minnesota. Very simple. That's how you do it.
I'm excited. I really want to ask you this, though, right off the bat. Scale of 1 to 10, Diesel, this week, week 1, how confident are you in your pick?
Fairly.
Oh, really?
Fairly. I mean, I like it. It's always hard picking a betting underdog, right? They're betting underdogs
for a reason.
Right. So you gotta outsmart Vegas. You do. Right? And
that's tough.
And in week 1, it's extra tough because we have no data on any of these teams. All we have are off-season projections. So let's go to one of the smartest Tolos I know. He is always in the top 3rd, top 10 at least of the final standings in the Upset Picks Challenge. I don't know how he does it, but he is just a savant at this. Let's go to Delvin. Delvin, welcome into the show. I'm sorry that you weren't here in week 0 to earn any points in week 0. I'm sure you would have been smart and taken Georgia Tech to beat Florida State, but you're here now.
Yeah.
Who is your pick?
I've been dealing with a cold, so
that stinks, man.
Yeah.
You sound a little under weather, man. You sound like you got a sock on your nose or something.
I'm dealing with it, but I was thinking about 2 games, but give me North Dakota State / the Denver Post versus Colorado. -10.
/ the Denver Post. That is fantastic. I don't know if I've ever heard that.
So Delvin's got North Dakota State +10 over Colorado, correct?
Yeah. Dion versus the Denver Post too. Well, find that in there too. So that's it.
Delvin, that's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, well, if he doesn't like the final score, he's just not going to call on it anymore in press conferences.
I think that'll be a common one. I think that'll be a common pick this week.
Yeah, because look at that. They got a history against the Big 12. They beat Iowa State, Iowa, Kansas, like that. So yeah,
that's one of those things you don't bet against North Dakota State in out of conference power conference games. You just don't.
Yeah.
They're that good.
Yeah. So y'all take care, guys.
Appreciate you, Devin. We got you marked down here for your week 1 pick, and the messages are absolutely flooding in. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Text us your name, your game, and the spread. We use the official spreads as of 4 p.m. As of 3 p.m. As of show start, 3 p.m. on Wednesdays, we lock in the spreads. So if you're off by a half a point, if you maybe went and got your spread somewhere else and you got it wrong because theirs has moved a little bit, everybody who picks the same game is going to get the exact same spread. Right. There you go.
Diesel, I'm really excited. I'm really intrigued in yours. Are you ready?
Yep, I am ready.
I want to hear it.
Okay. Okay. So here's what I did, Cole. I looked at a handful of different games here in week number 1. I looked at Miami at Florida plus 2.5.
Ooh.
I mean, it's hard to bet on a rivalry game against the home team. Miami's got a better roster. That's not up for debate. They have a better roster than Florida, but it's being played at Florida. And Billy Napier's job is on the line. I genuinely believe that Billy Napier's job is on the line, but I'm not going with that one because it's only a 2.5 point spread, right? You're not going to win this game kicking field goals.
Yeah,
you got to go a little bit bigger than that. It's a long season, but you're definitely not going to get there kicking field goals. I also looked at TCU at Stanford. Stanford, a 9.5 point dog at home, but I don't trust Stanford at all right now. I mean, TCU is just a much, much better team. I looked at Penn State at West Virginia plus 8. Penn State expected to be a very, very good football team, but man, it's just something in the water up there in Morgantown. Those boys know how to play. 8-point dogs at home. I looked at that one, but the one that I'm going with, Cole, is Wyoming plus 6 at Arizona State. Wyoming 9-4 last year. They're returning 13 starters, not including the quarterback. He is a junior quarterback, but this is his first year starting.
Okay.
Arizona State went 3-9 in 2023. They've got a redshirt freshman quarterback and a second-year head coach in Kenny Dillingham. I don't think they've got enough figured out over the course of this offseason. And Wyoming is a sneaky good football team. So I'm going Wyoming plus 6 at Arizona State.
Are they Cowboys?
They are the Cowboys.
Diesel's going with the Cowboys. I don't hate that. Plus 6, right?
Yep.
That's the spread on that game. So if it were to hit, which, by the way, I think it's important to note, obviously in this game, in this challenge, you want to hit big. But if you remember that it is a marathon, not a sprint, I think 6 is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Because that's a one-touchdown game that Vegas thinks could happen. And the reality of it is it's very possible. You're right. You said it earlier. It's hard to beat Vegas, but it's very, very possible to talk about a one-touchdown game going in the underdog's way. I like that. I don't hate it. I'm going to give you mine, and you will not like this one. I will tell you that. So this team, Diesel, that I'm picking this week has won 3 of the last 4 games as an underdog. The opponent has lost 4 of its last 5 games against non-conference opponents. This team that I'm picking has covered the spread in each of its last 5 home games against non-conference opponents. The team that they're going against has failed to cover the spread in 8 of its last 10 games against non-conference opponents. Diesel, give me 13-1-3. Georgia Southern will beat Boise State this weekend. I'm going with Georgia Southern to take care of business, knock off Boise State. They're replacing a lot. They have a new quarterback transfer in from Indiana, I believe. Darvis Brin is gone. Dexter Williams is the guy. I'm going Georgia Southern over Boise State.
And what's the spread on that game, Cole?
13 is where I believe. Let me double check
13.
here.
All right.
13, yes.
Hey,
13 points.
Georgia Southern is a sneaky team, and Clay Helton, this would be year 3, I believe, for Clay Helton at Georgia Southern. He's a quality coach, right? Like, you don't get the head coaching job at Southern Cal without being a good football coach. And a couple of years in a row under the same system, I think this team could certainly make a stride. I don't hate that pick at all. I would be excited as a Sun Belt fan if the Sun Belt teams are getting wins over quality Mountain West schools. That's a pick that I'm excited about. And remember, anybody who may be messaging in on the stream, we can't accept your entries. We can't accept your picks over the stream. We need you to text them in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Remember, give us your name, your game, and the spread. Entries are officially open. Picks are officially open, and they will be during show hours up until 7 p.m. on Friday. Up until 7 p.m. on Friday. You can pick any game that's being played on Thursday up until 7 o'clock on Thursday. You can play any game that's on Friday up until 7 o'clock on Friday. So you've got time to get your picks in, but start sending them our way.
Tiger
writing them down.
Tiger Pal Rachel tweets at me at the Cole Bryson and says, I hate Georgia Southern, but that's a good pick. Well, Tiger Pal Rachel, I hope it's a good pick. Look, every pick is a good pick right now, right? Every pick is a good pick until they play, until we lose. Tiger Pal Rachel starts us off, Diesel, on the text line and says, Clemson over Georgia, 13.5, because why not? Do you think we will see many Clemson, Georgia picks?
I think well, we've got a few. I just don't know that it's smart to pick with your heart. You got to pick with your head on these, Tiger Pal Rachel. I get that you're going to be like, see, I told you I was right if Clemson ends up hitting this thing. But to go down the list here, we got Delvin with North Dakota State plus 10 over Colorado. I got in with Wyoming plus 6 versus Arizona State. Tiger Pal Rachel taking Clemson plus 13.5 against Georgia. Clemson Oculus wants West Virginia plus 8 over Penn State. Grandpa Bucky wants North Dakota State over Colorado plus 10. Twisted Whisker says, give me Vanderbilt plus 13.5 versus Virginia Tech. Is that Creation 864 texting in with his SEC homer picks?
Surely not.
Could be.
Right?
How
There's
about Gold Rush?
One.
Gold Rush wants Clemson plus 13.5. Cole, you took Georgia Southern plus 13 against Boise State. Ethan Reed says, give me Clemson plus 13.5. Richmond over Virginia plus 19, says JB.
Ooh, that's
Brian
a lot of points.
Pettit, North Dakota State, upsetting Colorado. There you go. He's getting 10 points on that one. He says they're going to upset him by 3. That's an interesting pick there, Brian. We didn't need that little bit of information. We're excited to have it, but just make sure you send us the spread on the game.
And what is the spread on that one right now?
The spread on that game is listed at 10. Spread on that game is listed at 10.
Tolo Phil wants Nevada plus 8.5 over Troy Diesel. Tyler Powell, Florida plus 2.5 over Miami. Man, we're seeing a few low spreads come in. I get it. It's safe.
Yeah.
But boy,
you're not going to win.
It's not going to win you much.
A texter did ask earlier if there is a 3-point rule in effect this year. No, texter, there is not. We have eliminated the 3-point requirement rule. In years past, like, we've kind of allowed the 2.5-point games. If it's a big game, we've allowed the 2.5-point spread. But I don't like taking big games off the table just because it's a pick'em game, just because it's a 1.5 or a 2.5-point spread. I don't like taking those games off the table. So that is why we are eliminating the 3-point rule this year.
JC says, give me Florida Atlantic plus 14 over Michigan State. You know what? I don't hate that. I really don't. I don't think it'll happen, but this is the upset picks challenge. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of them aren't going to happen, but I don't hate that over Michigan State. Sheezy says Notre Dame plus 3 over A&M. Let's see. Billy Ho says Clemson plus 13.5 over Georgia. Texter says, give me West Virginia plus 8 to knock off Penn State. Well, Texter, you didn't put your name. How are we going to know who it is? You didn't put your name on the text, so resend the text with your name. Leprechaun of Lyman says West Virginia over Penn State. ESPN says +12. We are using ESPN, correct? That's correct. That's right.
That is correct. And the texter there, you're right. The texter who just said, which one were you saying said didn't give you the name?
Let's see. It was West Virginia to knock off Penn State from the 357.
Oh, that's Ayatollah. That's Ayatollah.
No. Two more down.
Oh, excuse me. You're right. If your phone number ends in 2374, you didn't give us. That is Ayatollah. Okay, so Ayatollah came back. Yes, perfect, Ayatollah came back and got us. So there you go. Sorry about that, Ayatollah. We got you.
Good catch.
You bounced back and you got us. You got yourself set up in the right format. Appreciate
Notre
that.
Dame Nate says the Richmond Spiders over Virginia at 19. Mark L.O. Duck says I'll take Fresno State plus 21.5 over Michigan. Wow. That's a big point spread.
Wow.
Big Mark L.O. Ducks going for the home run. Hey, I like it, though. I like it.
Yeah.
And then Brian Pettit says North Dakota State upset Colorado plus 10. Yep. That game, I believe, is the most. That one and Clemson, Georgia, Diesel have been the most chimed in. I do believe North Dakota State, Colorado will be picked a lot more frequently tomorrow and Friday before this challenge is over. But there's another one, North Dakota State, CJ from Greer. I'm telling you, that one, when it's all said and done at Friday, I think, Diesel, that North Dakota State might be our leader.
Yeah, usually the problem with the most popular pick, usually it doesn't hit. But Colorado, here's the thing. Colorado is healthy. Colorado has added more talent than what they had on the roster last year. I get it. North Dakota State is just phenomenal as an FCS team, and they have been for a very, very long time. There's no reason to believe that they will drop off in 2024. I don't know much about them from 2023. I don't know much about them as far as personnel and coaches who have stuck around. But, man, that is a program that is just firing on all cylinders, and they don't miss.
What would that do to the narrative of Colorado?
Oh, God.
Would it be just atrocious for Deion?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of teams lose to North Dakota State, a lot of power conference. You just why do you even bother scheduling them? Don't do it, right? Just don't do it.
First game too, man. Because you remember Diesel, last year was the first 3 games until they played Oregon. That's all everyone talked about was Colorado. And this year, it could be the same thing. They could be talking about them, but for the wrong reason.
Very well could be. Very well could be. Got so many picks through already. We're gonna recap some of these, and we're gonna keep it going throughout the show for sure. But remember, text in your name, your game, and the spread. There are no restrictions on points this year. You can pick a 1.5 point game if you want to. You just know that you're probably not gonna win this challenge with 1.5 point pick spreads.
Speaking of challenge, Diesel, someone who does a great job at what he does, it's a challenge to me, will join us next. Who's that? Kelley Ford, K4 Ratings, every Wednesday at this time right here on the Fan Upstate. The text line continues to buzz as the Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles just kicked off 23 minutes ago. And to the texters, the Tolos that chimed in, remember, as Diesel said once or 5 times, you've got to send your name, the game, and the amount of points in your text, 71307. Speaking of picks, when you make your picks, man, you got to look at kfordratings.com. You got to check out Kelley Ford, and we bring Kelley in right now. Kelley, it's finally here, a full slate of college football. But before we get to this week, I've got to ask you, the K Ford models, were they destroyed? Did they blow up after Georgia Tech pulled the upset on Saturday?
Hey, Cole, I'm so excited this weekend. I cannot wait. It is finally here in full force. College football is back, like you said. No, it wasn't blown up, but I'll tell you, there were some surprising results this past weekend, and that includes Georgia Tech. My numbers gave an 18% chance for the Yellow Jackets to pull off the upset. We talked about that means like a 1 in 5 chance. They played the game 5 times. Georgia Tech wins it once. Well, we got that one time on Saturday in Dublin, which was awesome to see for a neutral college football fan, and I'm sure for a lot of Clemson fans in your area as well. But it wasn't just the actual upsets. It was also how teams performed. So SMU, they get the win against Nevada, but they still fall in my power ratings about 3.5 points. Nevada is upgraded even though they lose, because in the power rating world, as we've talked about previously, and we will continue to do so all year, it's not about if you win or lose. It's about how you perform relative to the model's expectation. The deserving rankings, that's all about records. But from a power rating standpoint, it's how did you perform versus expectations. And man, the model did get a little bit of a shock, a jolt there in week 0. And I think we're going to get more this weekend.
Yeah, Kelley, it's the last week that your numbers for most of college football have to be solely predictive. We're actually going to get real actual data to go off of. You know, I know that you listen to and probably love this guy's work as much as I do. Josh Pate from the Late Kick Show, his collaboration with his Vegas partners, they still would see Florida State as a 7.5-point favorite on a neutral field against Georgia Tech, despite Georgia Tech getting it done in Dublin. I know you're not a handicapper, but do your numbers sort of bear out the same thing if you were to match Georgia Tech and Florida State up again?
So you say Josh's, and I do love Josh Pate, of course. I think every single college football fan, or certainly most do. I think his work is great. He's very objective, has a great pulse on the sport. He's been awesome to the industry. You say his numbers, his model has about 7.5. Mine, I just ran it quickly. It's a 6.5 point spread. So yes, even though we just saw that game play out, neutral field, if we play it again, I'm still going to take Florida State. Now, I'm much less confident than I was a week ago, right? So I said an 18% chance for Georgia Tech. Now at a 6.5 point spread, you're probably looking at a 30% ish win probability or win expectancy for that game. So yeah, that's how predictive models work, though. It's not going to totally reverse course just because of the outcome of one game, but we certainly learned that maybe Florida State isn't as good as we thought, and maybe Georgia Tech is a little bit better than we thought too. We're going to do that iteration over and over and over throughout the 14, 15 weeks of this season.
You talk about 1 out of 5, Kelley. How is it similar? How is that game similar, if at all, to Clemson, Georgia, in terms of Clemson's chances this Saturday?
So my numbers gave Georgia Tech an 18% chance last week. My numbers right now are giving Clemson a 15% chance. So I would say it's very, very similar with regard to the model's pregame expected performance of this Clemson and Georgia game. Now, there's a couple things to note here. The model does not know that this is week 1, and neither one of these teams have played yet this year. So in my opinion, and I think data backs this, I think the underdog has an advantage the more time you have off. So we've had all summer for the Clemson staff to be game planning for Georgia. Now, Georgia has that too, but it usually favors the underdog when you have extended periods of time. Here's something that works against Clemson, though, is my model views this as a truly neutral site. I'm not sure it's truly going to be neutral site with this game taking place in Atlanta. It may be, but my gut tells me that Georgia should be having a little bit of a home field advantage baked in, which the model is not doing. So I've got this as an incredibly good game, 9.0 out of 10 on the watchability scale. Georgia's the best team in the country by my model. Clemson's in the top 15 yet again, as they seem to always be under Dabo. So I think it's going to be really, really fun, really, really exciting. And Clemson fans should take confidence from the Georgia Tech performance, because my model thinks pregame, at least, it's about the same win expectancy.
Kelley, put on your prediction hat right now. Not projection time, it's prediction time. How do you think your numbers will change on Clemson around 4 p.m. on Saturday?
So, yeah, I think, ideally you'd say, I don't think they're going to change at all because you think the model's got a good handle of this team. How it's actually going to turn out is Clemson right now, for me, they have the number 11 defense in the country by my numbers. On offense, they're number 21. I think it's going to be difficult after playing Georgia, who's top 5 on both sides of the ball, to really have a good understanding of the performance we see, especially if Clemson does not perform very well. I'm not saying they won't. I'm saying if they don't, I want to be very careful to not make a knee-jerk reaction and downgrade Clemson too much on either side of the ball or overall as a team, because we don't know how much better Georgia is than the rest of college football this year. And if Clemson finds a way to pull a surprise upset or certainly be very, very competitive, I think, of course, the numbers are going to look kindly on that, and Clemson's projections moving forward, even with a loss, will improve. So it's really hard to say right now. Of course, we got to know how the game's going to turn out. But either way, especially if Clemson loses the game, I don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction and condemn this Clemson team in this season, because I think it's very possible that Georgia, and maybe if you want to throw Ohio State in there, they might be, from a talent and just power rating standpoint, they might be operating on a different level than the rest of college football. So Clemson's going to get a huge test, their biggest test of the season, right out of the gate, and we're going to learn a lot about the Tigers, but let's be careful to not overreact.
Kelley Ford, K Ford Ratings, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. Kelley, we started this show today by having the topic of conversation about depth in the Core 4 conferences. So I'm going to put you on the spot. According to K Ford Ratings, when you look at power rankings, is there a model that proves us right or wrong when you talk about the depths of the 4, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC, when you talk about which one is the deepest conference? What do the K Ford Ratings have to say on that?
So my model would suggest that certainly the SEC is the deepest conference in college football. Like if you go down the list and say, look at the 8th best, 9th best, 10th best team in each of these conferences, what's their power rating? The SEC is going to be the highest power rated team at each of those levels. Again, I haven't checked this with facts, or I haven't double checked this with my numbers today, but I'm assuming based on what I've looked at here and as we know about what we know about these teams right now, it's going to be the SEC. The Big Ten is going to come in second in this analysis. And then what I think is interesting is between the ACC and the Big 12, I think the ACC has more high-end firepower. And, of course, they took a little bit of a hit with Florida State performing the way they did last week. But certainly Clemson, still Florida State. Miami's going to be up there. You know, you can even throw a Louisville in there if you want, maybe an NC State as a dark horse. At the very, very top, when you look at the Big 12 and the ACC, I'm going to give the edge to the ACC. But where the Big 12, I think, is a little bit better than the ACC is in that depth. And since that's what we're talking about, I do think if I were to go down the list and actually look at this, you know, number 7, number 8, number 9, in each of these conferences, I believe my numbers would tell me that it's the Big 12 that actually has the edge over the ACC. So I think the ACC has the firepower at the top and probably the better chance maybe to get 2 teams in. Of course, Florida State has hurt that chance here to get 2 teams in the playoff from that conference early on. But I think the Big 12 probably has more contenders for a spot in the playoffs because I do think they are deeper than the ACC. So I'd go SEC, Big 10, Big 12, since we're talking about depth, not top-end talent, and then the ACC fourth out of the Power 4 conferences.
Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings joining us here on the Fan Upstate, Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We spent some time yesterday, Kelley, doing a little thought exercise, winning the battle but losing the war. So we're thinking of which teams are likely going to win, in our minds at least, each power conference, and then who might clip them along the way. And I look at that Georgia football schedule, and I see, man, that game looming on October 19th against number 4 Texas. They will have played 3 straight, coming off of a bye, 3 straight SEC teams at that point. I know it's probably a difficult thing for the numbers to bear out, but generally, like trends wise, what have you noticed in your time doing what it is that you do about good teams when they face long stretches in a row of no time off against really, really good teams? Do you start to see that third, fourth, fifth game in a stretch of really tough games starting to pop up as like really likely losses?
You absolutely do see that. And that's one of the things, as we've talked about, no model, including my own, can capture everything about a team or about college football. This is one of those scheduling dynamics, as I call it, that certainly has an impact on teams, and this just wear and tear week in, week out, the general fatigue that you accrue from playing top-end teams week after week after week during difficult stretches, that does wear on teams. And especially when you throw in travel, and now with the expanded footprints of most conferences, you're going to have more travel built into these schedules. That is certainly something that people need to keep an eye on. And if you're betting games, something to certainly identify and try to use to your advantage against those lines, because that is a real thing in college football. The data does support that. You know, you look at my teams who are projected to win their conferences this year, the Power Four. I've got Georgia. I've got Ohio State. I now have Clemson. You would have asked me a week ago, I had Florida State in that position, but now Clemson has taken over from going number 2 to number 1, and then Utah in the Big 12. Each of those teams, to varying degrees, certainly Georgia, as you talked about, the number 2 most difficult schedule in the country by my numbers. Certainly all of these teams, though, within conference play especially, are going to have a stretch or potentially stretches where it's very difficult week in and week out. And we're going to get that in college football now across the board as the talent continues to get condensed into smaller and smaller numbers of power conferences. It gets more difficult to run through those conference schedules unscathed. And so that is a real thing. The data does support that. And I certainly think that each of those teams I mentioned, as well as the contenders chasing them, are all going to have to navigate that very specific point at numerous times during this year.
Kelley, your ratings give Florida State a now 20% chance of being in the college football playoff with that loss, even though they're in the ACC. Do you see that continuing to decline? Obviously, a loss would put them out, and your impact of this week's games on at-large status chart on your website shows them one above the eliminated with a loss category, still remaining in contention for Florida State.
So that CFP page on my website that you're referencing right now, that one actually gets updated on Thursday. So it has not been updated to reflect the week 0. So apologies about that. That'll be a Thursday update for me, but I can, because I was curious myself. They went from a 20-ish% in that 20% range to be an at-large, Florida State, that is, to now, I checked because I was curious earlier this week, it's down to about 5% is where Florida State right now has to be an at-large. That doesn't mean it's a 5% chance to make the playoff, because there's still a path for them to be the AQ out of the ACC. But I'm saying from an at-large perspective, my numbers currently assign about a 5% chance for Florida State to earn that at-large bid. So, yeah, I mean, even with the expanded playoff, certainly Florida State's chances are still better than they would be in the 4 team. I mean, it'd be close to being done in the 4 team. Probably not. You know, if you still went 11-1 on the season, won the ACC as a 12-1 champ with your only loss at a neutral site week 0 to start the year, you're still probably in. Of course, Florida State fans will roll their eyes and say, yeah, we went 13-0, buddy, and didn't make it. So don't tell me 12-1 would be good enough. So I get that point too. The expanded playoff is definitely going to help them, but still, that was at this point not a great loss for Florida State. We will see. Maybe Georgia Tech ends up being a really, really good team this year, and that loss continues to look better. But right now, Florida State fans, their at-large chances are pretty low. They need to be hoping they can find their way back into that ACC race and get a shot at that AQ.
Find his website, kfordratings.com. Trust me, that website will make you smarter. It makes me smarter every single day. Kelley, we had a texter, I think it was yesterday or the day before, upset that we spent a little too much time, in his opinion, talking about why Florida State lost that game against Georgia Tech and not what Georgia Tech did to win it. So look at your look at your Georgia Tech page. What do your odds say about Georgia Tech being undefeated going into the bye, which they have on September 28th? They have one really good football team on the schedule, September 21st, on the road at Louisville. But if Georgia Tech can play the way that they played against Florida State, they could certainly be undefeated going into that week. So what do you see through the first 5 weeks of the season for Georgia Tech?
I really appreciate your long runway there, that filibustering to allow me to do the quick math over here on my end. I've got a 14% chance that Georgia Tech enters that off week in week 5 at what would be 5-0. As you said, the only game in which they're currently projected to be an underdog in that stretch is at Louisville. It's a 27% win expectancy there. You really like Georgia Tech's chances against Georgia State, of course, and VMI. The Syracuse game on the road is a little bit more of a toss-up, 56% win expectancy. But I will say that 14%, it's possible that can continue to improve if Georgia Tech plays like they just played against Florida State, against Georgia State, against Syracuse, and just moving forward, their power rating is going to climb, because what's happening with every team, once we start playing games, your preseason rating, which is just, it is what it is, that's getting phased out as games are being played, and it's getting replaced with the in-season data. So what I always try to remind people is if you are playing in season at a higher level, especially a significantly higher level as Georgia Tech did, than your preseason projection was calling for, as that gets phased out, you're going to be skyrocketing up in the power rating. It's not like once everything finds its level and then you move a little bit here or there. As preseason gets phased out, in-season comes in, if that delta is very large, whether it's positive or negative, you're going to have a lot of movement with your rating. So Georgia Tech up 3.1 points from just last week. But if they have the exact same type of performance this week against Georgia State, which you have to guard against a letdown spot, right? But if they play that way again, I expect that number to improve yet again, which is then going to make that 14% chance continue to rise and certainly be better. So if I had to really put a number on it, I'd probably say closer to about a 25% chance if I really had to guess that Georgia Tech team could be 5-0 after the Louisville game, waiting to welcome Duke to town then in week 6.
Great stuff. Fantastic. Kelley, always appreciate you taking time to join us, and we look forward to it again next Wednesday.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. That's Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings, kfordratings.com. I'm entrenched over here, Diesel, on the projected college football playoff results. Yeah. There's one that has a simulation based on the K Ford Ratings, and then there's one that's just the projected college football playoff bracket. One is the bracket, one is the results. Gosh, it's fascinating.
How many Red Bulls would you have to drink for your mind to work as fast as Kelley Phillips?
I literally thought the exact same thing when he was on. Like, I can't even process as fast as he can spit it out, calculate, and then when you ask him questions to simulate on the fly, how he does it so quickly, I have no idea. It's fantastic. It really is. He's hard to beat, man.
Kelley is the absolute best, and we appreciate his time. Look him up on socials at K Ford Ratings. Look him up on his website, kfordratings.com. He's just built a phenomenal website. And again, I promise you, you find that website, it's going to make you smarter. When we come back, Cole, we're going to take a whip around the sports world, see what else is happening out there that we haven't had a chance to get to yet today. Our Daily Wires are next. We talk about all the biggest things that you want to talk about here on Wire to Wire with Cole Bryson and Diesel, but there's a lot more happening out there. So we get to it on this segment called Our Daily Wires. This is the buzz around the sports world. The Atlanta Braves defeated the Minnesota Twins yesterday by a score of 8-6. They win the series.
Whoa.
Congratulations to the Braves. Now they are on a 4-game road stretch against the Phillies, so a big chance to make up some ground.
And they have one more with the Twins tonight, right?
Is that true?
One more with the Twins,
okay.
I
There you
believe.
go.
Yeah, one more with the Twins, and then 4 games. Ooh,
At the Phillies.
that could be huge.
Yeah.
I said earlier on Twitter, Diesel, if they were to beat the Twins tonight, Houston beats Philly, the Braves take 3 of 4 from Philly this weekend, they'd be heading into a series with Colorado, only 3.5 games back.
Well, we know what they do at Colorado. They split bats in half and they clock umpires in the side of the head. Darwin Nunez is among the Uruguay players who were handed bans by CONMEBOL for the fight that broke out in the stands in Charlotte during the Copa America match between Uruguay and Colombia. He received a 5-game international suspension and a $20,000 fine. He will miss the 2026 World Cup qualifiers against Paraguay, Venezuela, Peru, and Ecuador. So that's, I don't know. You'd have to talk to a soccer guy who could tell you if a 5-game international suspension is a big deal or not. However, missing your first 5 qualifiers, that's tough. You better hope that you're not crucial to your team's success. The NCAA, we talked about this earlier, Cole, has proposed eliminating the April transfer window in favor of a single offseason transfer window. Under the proposal, the 30-day window in December would become the lone opportunity for players to enter the transfer portal. Former Jets running back Dalvin Cook has signed with the Dallas Cowboys. You're a delusional Cowboys fan. How do you feel about that?
I like it. I really do like it.
Yeah?
Not bad. Need depth there.
A lot of news going on right now. Obviously, a lot of cut downs. Cut downs were yesterday in the NFL, so there's a lot of movement with players. Some things we're not really surprised about here at all. The Pittsburgh Steelers have named Russell Wilson QB1 over Justin Fields. LeBron James said on his podcast that he and Bronny have a rule. Don't call me dad in the building. When we're working, I am LeBron. He said, or you can call me GOAT. I'd be like, Dad, I'm not calling you GOAT. I'm going to call you LeBron, Mr. James, but I'm not calling you GOAT or Dad.
It'd be weird to, in a work environment like that. Yeah.
Dad.
I like that. Got to call him by his first name.
Upset picks are live. Give us your name, your game, and your spread for week 1 games. This is a long stretch, man. We got games playing all the way through Monday of next week. So
Labor Day.
We're not going to be giving you, obviously, we're not here on Labor Day either. We're getting the day off.
Yay.
So Tuesday, maybe, probably Wednesday of next week is when we're going to have the updated standings for the upset picks. But we got so many that have come through. And if you want to get in your week 1 pick, now would be a good time to do it. Text us 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. This is a wild one, Cole. The 28th ranked tennis player in the world, Caroline Garcia of France, detailed what she said, quote, were just a few of the hundreds of nasty messages she's gotten on social media after being eliminated from the U.S. Open, including that she should consider suicide and, quote, I hope your mom dies soon. She blames unhealthy online betting as part of the reason why these messages have gotten so nasty. Here's a quote directly from Caroline. Tournaments and the sports keep partnering with betting companies, which keep attracting new people to unhealthy betting. The days of cigarette brands sponsoring sports are long gone, yet here we are promoting betting companies which actively destroy the lives of some people.
It's exactly true. It does, and it's a scary thing. You and I have talked about it. That situation that you brought up, that's just nasty, uncalled for. It's sad, but the reality of it is that last statement that you said, it's exactly right. I mean, that's the world we live in, and people, when they don't hit their bets, they do stupid things, and they say stupid. It's sad, man.
We talked about it a couple of weeks back. We had stories of players fans who have lost money betting on them, have tracked them down. They have come to their house looking for money. They have found their Venmo accounts and sent them Venmo requests for money that they've lost. You got fans in the first couple of rows yelling at players in the batter's box, or excuse me, in the on-deck circle, saying, I've got $1,000 riding on you to hit a home run today. Don't mess this up. You know, threatening them if they don't get the points that they need to get money to win the bet. So it's really ugly and scary how this thing has gone so far so fast, and the leagues aren't doing anything about it. They're essentially saying, in the parlance of Odyssey, when we have an issue, Cole, send in a ticket. You know, send a message to our portal to help deal with this. Well, that doesn't help anything. You were the root cause. You got in bed with these betting companies, and you are bringing more and more people into our sport and watching our sport and betting on our sport than probably should be here. Gerard Mayo says that he will name the Patriots starter tomorrow.
It's got to be Drake May, right?
You think? If it was me, if I'm Gerard Mayo, I'm not starting Drake May in week 1 of the season. No.
Go Jacoby Brissett?
I would go Jacoby Brissett. I don't think Jacoby Brissett would make it past like maybe week 6 as the starter, but give Drake May time. If you truly believe in Drake May, in your Gerard Mayo, you're what, second year as the head coach of the Pats or first year?
First year.
First year as the head coach. You're safe. You're not going to lose your job. They're not going to fire you. You don't feel like you have to leverage your entire career on Drake May at this point. He's not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere, at least not in the immediate future. Yeah. So send your Jacoby Brissett out there for a couple of weeks. Let Drake May keep learning, and then maybe put him out there through the midpoint of the season. And I think that would be my tactic if I was Gerard Mayo.
John Dog texts in and says, Cole, what's your upset pick so I can pick different? Well, John Dog, it's Boise State losing to Georgia Southern. I have Georgia Southern knocking off Boise State. Again, it's the upset picks challenge, so it probably won't happen, just like you sending in a funny text, but we can all try.
And we've had a couple more come in over the past couple of minutes. Isaac says, give me FAU plus 14 over Michigan State. Mason Brew wants Notre Dame over Texas A&M plus 3. Palmetto Buckeyes wants Stanford over TCU plus 9.5. Michael in Simpsonville wants Notre Dame plus 3. And John Corley, first one making this pick, USC 4 points over LSU.
It might be a good game. I believe that's the Sunday night game. I'm looking forward to it. All right, it's time to fight it out. 5 o'clock fight. You decide who wins and who loses next. The challenge continues on. What challenge is that? Well, it's the Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles. The text line continues to populate with your picks, 71307. If you're new to the show, I want to tell you two things. Number one, the Upset Picks Challenge for week 1 is underway. You can get in on the votes, on the challenge, with your name, your game, and the amount of points, 71307. Also, if you are new to the program, we appreciate you being here. Also, 5 o'clock fight happens every single day at 5 o'clock, and you might think, 5 o'clock fight, what is that? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it is, and you have a chance to play a part in this segment.
It's an all-out slugfest, and nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
The Tolos who have been here for a while know how it works, but for the new Tolos out there, 3 rounds. Diesel and I must disagree on each round. You, the Tolo, gets to chime in. Let us know who wins and loses each round. 71307 is the text line. Start your text with the word fan. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can hop in the comment section there as well, and let's get it started.
Round 1, fight.
Diesel, I ask you the question. You have a football program in college football. You're the athletic director, okay? You get to make the decisions. You do the hiring and the firing. You're in charge. Who would you rather have as your head coach? You only get 2 options here. Your options are Hugh Freeze or Shane Beamer. Which would you rather have? Don't laugh.
So my choices are a shyster, a swindler who wins, or a Boy Scout who can't get you past 500.
Diesel.
Hugh Freeze. The answer is Hugh frickin' Freeze.
Really?
Right? It's dirty. You feel icky. You know, it's like going out with that girl that you met on Tinder that you know you probably shouldn't go out with, but it's been a while, right? You hadn't won in a while. You feel like you just need some of that human contact. And by human contact, I mean wins in college football. Give me Hugh Freeze in a heartbeat. I mean, he's going to be gone in a couple of years anyway. He's smart enough to realize, oh, I'm about to get hit by NCAA sanctions. I better get out of here. So he's going to leave before the bleep hits the real fan.
This one's fascinating. It is a little bit of a difficult conversation to have because you may disagree, but I do think that the margin between the two, it's closer than you might think. Hugh Freeze is a good coach. I do know, that Hugh Freeze won a lot of games in his past 10 years, right? Auburn, the jury's still out on what Hugh Freeze can do at Auburn. We may be wrong, I may be wrong. Hugh Freeze may prove me wrong and go win a lot of games at Auburn. He's played well against Nick Saban. However, I'm not a Hugh Freeze guy. I don't think Hugh Freeze is seen as someone who is genuine. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with Hugh Freeze, and for that, record this. I'd rather have Shane Beamer as my head coach over Hugh Freeze, Diesel.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
Wow.
Give me Beamer ball, baby. I just like Shane Beamer better. Maybe it's the wrong answer, but to me, it's the right answer. What say you, 71307? Start your text with the word
he coached
fan.
at Liberty. He's a changed man.
And he
Hugh
won a lot of
Freeze is a
games
changed
against,
man.
but he won a lot of games against a schedule that you said yesterday has always been pretty bad
Awful.
as of late, right?
Awful schedule.
So I don't know. I think the next few years at Auburn will really tell us a lot about Hugh Freeze. That is round 1.
Round 2, fight.
Continuing on the college football conversation. I don't know if you know this or not, Diesel, but Clemson and Georgia play on Saturday.
Really?
Yes. If you just got out of hibernation, they do play in Atlanta. Cade Klubnik on Saturday, Diesel, round number 2, and today's 5 o'clock fight. Over, under 1.5 turnovers for QB1.
Man. Well, so long as quarterbacks get credit for interceptions, even if it's the receiver's fault.
Yeah.
And we know that Georgia is really good at creating havoc without even going back and finding their turnover numbers from 2023. I'm going to say over. I think Cade makes a mistake or two in the passing game and very well could fumble the ball as well. I mean, I know Clemson's O-line is solid, but Georgia's D-line is better. They're going to get in that backfield. They're going to create havoc. I think Cade Klubnik is going to put the ball on the ground once so he's going to fumble it once and he's going to throw a pick as well.
He cannot fumble, man. God, that'd be bad because last year
2 turnovers and they're in trouble.
Well, they are. You're certainly right on that. I can't push back, but last year, like, that's what his name was, Cade Fumble Klubnik. You saw that off the bat in the Duke game. Not only did you see it off the bat in the game, you saw it off the bat in the very first drive, right? They marched all the way down the field on that Monday night. And after they marched all the way down the field, what did Cade Klubnik do? Well, he said, I'm going to gift the defense with this fumble. Diesel, he better not fumble on Saturday. I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to go under 1.5. It would not surprise me. It would not shock me if Cade Klubnik does have 1 turnover Saturday because, to your point, Georgia's defense is really good. They're opportunistic. They've got guys. They're really quick. They're going to put pressure on you in a lot of different ways. So it wouldn't really surprise me if you told me Cade had 1, but I'll go under 1.5 on Cade Klubnik turnovers. One more round.
Final round. Fight.
Round 3 of today's 5 o'clock fight. Diesel, what was the superior childhood recess game? Was it dodgeball or was it kickball?
Oh, man. Friendships were made and broken by one of those hard rubber balls hitting you in the face. The superior game is dodgeball. I mean, it's just great. It is how you separate the wheat from the chaff, the men from the boys, and the awkwardly feminine from the possibly Canadian. Dodgeball is just a great game. Dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge. We all know the 5 Ds of dodgeball.
It's a good movie, too.
It's a great movie as well. Patches O'Houlihan, Live My Life by a lot of his mottos. No, dodgeball was absolutely great. You had to have your head on a swivel. I mean, you know, when your team gets down to like 2 or 3 and the other team is loaded up, they're all coming at you from different angles. That's a hard game to play. It's the answer is dodgeball.
Dodgeball's fun. Dodgeball was a great recess game. But I loved baseball growing up, and the closest thing to it at recess in school, Diesel, was kickball. You really got to put those legs to work. And look, dodgeball, yeah, everybody likes dodgeball, but dodgeball just sometimes gets old, especially if your teammates suck. Like you said, you're always holding the ball at the very end, and you've got 6 other kids throwing at you, and you're not even throwing the ball. You're using your ball to deflect all the other ones, right? So I'm going kickball as the superior childhood recess game. I love me a good game of kickball, man. You know what's even better than kickball? We did this one time growing up, Diesel. Slip and slide kickball. Have you ever seen that?
No, but it sounds great.
Slip and slide. So the base paths are slip and slides.
The whole base path?
The whole base path.
Oh, man, that's hard.
That's fun, though.
That's
fun.
Like, that's hard.
So, like, it's a pool where the pitcher is. So the bases are pools, right? But you kind of construct it so it's safe. But yeah, slip and slide kickball, man. It's a lot of fun.
It seems to me like it'd be better to get like a little bit of a running start on dirt and then slide the last half of the base path into the pool where the base is. That's tough. I want to play it now, though. I really want to play.
I know. All right, that's today's 5 o'clock fight. I'll give you a recap after you hear how you can be a part of the fight.
What do you want Diesel and Cole Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line, fight on the Fan Upstate.
If you just tuned in, quick recap for today's 5 o'clock fight. Round 1, would you rather have Shane Beamer or Hugh Freeze as your head coach? Diesel said, oh, that's a no-brainer, Hugh Freeze. I say, give me Shane. I'm going to roll with Beamer ball. Round 2, Cade Klubnik on Saturday. Over under 1.5 turnovers. Diesel says over. I say under. Round 3, the superior childhood recess game, dodgeball or kickball. Diesel says dodgeball all day. And I say, no, you got to give me kickball. That's today's 5 o'clock fight. Who do you side with? Who wins? Who loses? 71307. Start your text with the word fan.
Let's check out let's go with the stream first. Let's start with the stream. You can jump in there on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube and get in your votes. Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla says he's going Cole round 1, Diesel round 2, and Cole wins round 3. Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla with you today.
I love that name, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great one. Z Fink says Diesel with the sweep. Dodgeball was the best. Mark L.O. Duck says Diesel wins round 1. Diesel wins round 2. Cole wins round 3. Badcraft says same votes as yesterday. Diesel wins round 1 and 2. Cole wins round 3.
Well, what a way to lazy votes. What a lazy way to vote today, Badcraft.
He's a fine, intelligent, upstanding man.
Not today. He's not.
Calm
today.
down, Cole.
He's lazy today with his votes because he's going Diesel 1 and 2 again. All right. Let's see. Mike says on the YouTube stream, Diesel, Cole round 1, Diesel round 2, Cole for the dub today. Thank you, Mike Main. You're the main.
I was just trying to be helpful, Mike, and help you with, you know what? There is no spread on the game you wanted to pick.
See, now you're the one.
Also, it doesn't count, Mike, on the stream. You got to message it into us text it into us at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Yeah.
Oh, did he send his pick in on stream?
Yeah. Well, he wanted to pick a game that he thought there was no spread, but there is a spread actually.
Spread on just about everything, right?
Just about everything. They don't do a lot of FCS, FBS spreads, or they haven't traditionally in the past. I'm seeing a lot more of them this year, and especially in week 1.
Before we get to the text line, I'll tell you this. Speaking of spreads, you know what I did today for the first time in a long time, Diesel? I dusted off the old cheese website, the old gambling, the old sports book. I have not put any cheese on a game in probably over 2 months. It's been a long time.
You're starting to get itchy?
Oh, itchy. I mean, I'm for sure. So I dusted it off today, started looking at some spreads, some teasers, and I'm excited. College football full force. All right, let's go to the text line. You ready? Actually, let's preface it first. If I lost a bunch of rounds today, let's just move. I mean, come on.
Jeez.
Come on.
Take your medicine, would you?
All the way down to 508. Texter says Diesel 1, Diesel 2, and Cole 3. Well, Diesel gets a win. Started off on the text line. 4-3-2, round 1, Cole, round 2, Diesel. Not a fair fight on that one. Should have been 2-5. Oh, 2.5. Ooh, you think 2.5? Over would be three turnovers.
3 turnovers?
That would not be good. That would not be good. And then you also get round 3 from that Tolo. Diesel, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. I've never had to dodge a wrench. Oh, that came from Michael in Simpsonville. Appreciate the text. Tolo Allen says round 1 Cole, round 2 Diesel, round 3 Cole. So I did get Allen on today's 5 o'clock fight. Let's see. 483 says I got Cole with a clean sweep. Diesel lobbying to the fans of the movie Dodgeball was a smart move, but still giving the sweep to Cole, says Boston Scott.
Boston Scott, come on, man. You just you pick me up and then you slam me back.
He did.
down.
He got your hopes up there for a minute, didn't he?
He did.
Brandon from Moore, Diesel, says that Sam Houston State over Rice. That's what he likes, 12.5. I have not looked into that game. I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about Sam Houston State and Rice.
Are they FBS now?
Sure.
Were they one of the teams that just moved up into Conference USA?
I'll have to look on that. Is that white rice? Wild rice? What kind of rice is that?
As Josh Pate of Late Kick says on his show, you cannot lose to food. Don't lose to rice.
Like that.
You cannot lose to food.
I like that. John Dog, round 1 Cole, round 2 Diesel, round 3 Cole wins, but still no points. Let's see. 491 says Cole clean sweeper. Lefty Tiger chimes in Diesel. Round 1 Diesel, round 2 Diesel, round 3 Cole. Played slip and slide once around the age of 27 and hurt for the next week.
It's amazing all the things you used to be able to do as a kid. You could get a running start, dive and land right there on the old rib cage, and you were fine. You'd get up and do it again and again and again and again. Can't do that anymore.
Now you just do something so simple. I did something the other day that I didn't think was going to be bad. The next day I was like, oh my gosh.
True story, Cole. This happened to be 5 years ago. I just woke up one day with a sprained ankle.
No way.
Had no idea what I did.
Did you kick the wall?
No, I didn't go all Beamer on a water cooler. I didn't do anything. I didn't roll it. I didn't twist it. I didn't step on anything funny.
Something that I shouldn't have kicked.
Kicked something I shouldn't have kicked. Well, if you were kicking some more ass, you wouldn't be.
You sprained an
kicking water
ankle in
coolers.
your sleep.
Yeah, I don't have a clue.
What did
how
you
I did
do
it.
when you woke up? Were you just like in shock?
I'm not kidding you. I had to be on crutches for like 3 days.
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Not a clue. Not a clue what I did.
Oh my!
I mean, like it
gosh.
was swollen up and like nasty looking.
I'll say this: I don't think we've ever had as many Tolos vote in the 5 o'clock fight today on the text line. I haven't even gotten to half of the text. A ton of votes coming in. 5 o'clock fight. We left off where? Lefty Tiger. 422 says Diesel round 1, Cole round 2, but Diesel round 3. So you did get. I think we're split today. Diesel, pretty good. Drew, what is this? Drew Bustank, is that right? Says round. Drew Bustank.
Like the band Hoobastank.
Drew says Cole round 1, Diesel round 2, Cole round 3. 422 says round 1 Diesel, round 2 Cole, round 3 Diesel. Willie B. Ho, I wouldn't want Beamer coaching my kids' football team. Gosh, these are some good ones today. Play-by-play JB says Cole 1, Diesel 2, Cole 3. So I did get the win there. Bo, what's up, Bo? Cole round 1, Diesel 2, and round 3 Diesel. No, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Cole round 1 and 2, Diesel round 3. He asked, though, Diesel, is murder ball the same as dodgeball? I've never heard it called
murder ball.
Murder ball. Rick from Greer says Cole sweep. Is that Rick from Greer, like Rick, the Rick that I'm thinking
murder
about?
ball is the original name for wheelchair rugby. So, no, it's not the same. But that's fascinating that they decided to call it murder ball.
Say that again.
It's wheelchair rugby.
Never heard of it.
Well, it's a Paralympic game.
Sounds fast. I just never heard of it. Let's see. Tolo Bonehead says Tigers by 3, Cole sweeps. Mac the Knife.
Tolo Bonehead, are you saying, is that just a prediction, or are you trying to get that in as your upset pick? I don't know for sure. But that said.
Yeah, let us know if it is.
We got to know for sure if that's what you mean by that.
Yeah, let us know because that's important.
Because that's not the correct spread.
That's right.
Tolo Bonehead, if you want to make that your upset pick, you got to text back in, say Tolo Bonehead, Clemson plus 13.5 versus Georgia.
Mac the Knife says Sam Houston versus Rice upset pick. Send in the amount of points, Mac the Knife, and who you're going with, Sam Houston or Rice. I don't even know what the spread is.
Mac the Knife, right. You got to give us your name, your game, and the spread. Without all three of those pieces of information, it is an invalid pick.
And then he does go on to say Cole, Diesel. So you got the win there. Alex in Fountain Inn says Cole 1, 2, and 3. So I did get the sweep. I tell you, there were a lot of texts. If I missed some of your 5 o'clock fight texts, I do apologize. There were several in the stack today. What did Scott say?
Scott said, sorry, Diesel, I wasn't trying to get your hopes up. Or was I? He also says Drew Bustank is an incredibly clever name. That's awesome. So there you go. Drew Bustank. You've got Scott on Facebook's approval.
You know what I love
for the
Diesel?
nickname?
Like I'm seeing a lot more Tolo and then the listener's name.
Yep.
Tolo Bonehead.
Yep.
Tolo Rick. Like these guys, they're doing it right. They understand the assignment. They're putting the Tolo just in our fantasy football league, minus Tolo Cole. Turn on, leave on. That's what we ask you to do every single day on this program.
When we come back, Cole, as football is officially upon us, we've got high school football already. We've got college football starting for real this week. And then we've got the NFL starting next week. I want to know from you, Tolos, what are you trying to cram in chore-wise, project-wise, before football starts in full? That's next on the Fan Upstate.
Well, Dak, here's the deal.
Shop now at 844.
Cole, do you want to take a guess at what the spread is on that Ole Miss Furman game? 7:00.
I'm surprised there's a spread on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's week 0, right? Maybe it's that ESPN Bets is putting a spread on damn near everything.
All right,
now.
let me guess. I have not looked. I have not cheated.
Yep.
And I don't want to be disrespectful to Furman because we do carry Furman on the
number
radio.
9 FCS team in the country in the preseason coaches poll in college FCS versus number 6 in the preseason FBS poll.
38.5. Don't tell me to go higher.
Gotta go up. Gotta go up.
Don't tell me that. Please don't tell me. 42.5.
42 points. 42.
That's rough. But
damn.
It just shows like Ole Miss is the real deal.
Yeah.
We know Furman in the FCS, they had an incredible season. And by the way, we'll talk to Furman head coach Clay Hendricks tomorrow at 6:00 on the program. But Diesel, that is 42. Let me reverse the roles here and put it on you. Would you take the 42.5? If
yeah, I probably would. I'd take Furman to cover.
Okay.
But not by much.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. That's 6 touchdowns. That's a 6-touchdown win.
That's a lot of points.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points.
I'd have to look back at Lane Kiffin and his history playing FCS teams. Is he a run-up the score kind of guy?
He seems like it, right? He seems like a guy that would just run it up. He doesn't care. He doesn't have a soul, does he? He doesn't care about.
Oh, he doesn't have a soul.
I don't think he
Come
does.
on,
I don't
man.
think so. I love Lane Kiffin.
2023. Did Ole Miss play an FCS team in 2020? Okay, I might want to take back what I said there.
Oh no.
Because September 2nd, they beat Mercer.
Let me guess. 61 to 7.
Keep going up. 73 to 7.
God.
73 to
points.
7.
And they probably covered. 73 to 7.
Yeah. They beat in 2022, they beat Central Arkansas 59 to 3. So I don't think Lane Kiffin is the kind of guy to run it up is total BS.
That's
Austin
tough,
P,
man.
2021, 54 to 17. So Ole Miss does run up the score. Maybe I would pick Ole Miss to cover after all.
Again, 42 points.
42.
40, I'd say,
Mike Main says Mercer is not top anything in FCS. Well, you're not wrong, Mike. I mean, granted, we were talking about Mercer last year, not Mercer this year. Mercer's been okay. And they also hired Bobby Lamb. I don't know if Bobby Lamb is still there at Mercer. I know that he was.
Bobby Lamb is
former Furman coach.
Is at Anderson now.
Is he now?
Anderson's first year of a football program.
So he's clearly, obviously, he's not there at Mercer anymore. So
now I think, you know what, though? Again, I'm not reading anything. I think his son,
Taylor.
I think his son's, I don't know. Let me stop talking.
Son was a hell of a quarterback at App State. He was
Yeah.
fantastic. And I know he's a coordinator somewhere. I believe I know he was at Gardner-Webb for a while. I don't know where he is right now.
It is Taylor, right?
Taylor.
I thought
Spelled
for
like
whatever
Swift.
reason is he at Virginia? This was, let's see.
Great radio.
I know, really. I'm sorry. He was the quarterback's coach at Virginia. I don't know if this is the same Taylor Lamb. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Same?
He's at Virginia.
He's still there?
It seems to be. He's entering his
Wow.
3rd season quarterback's coach at Virginia.
How about that?
So congratulations to Taylor getting it done at a power team.
That's
power. When you talk about Virginia, power.
Oh God,
power team.
You went there.
So we've got just a little over a week left, ladies. I know we have a few tolettes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like calling them tolettes because there's somebody out there in Pickens who just calls it a tolette. He's like, man, I gotta go find a tolette.
Well, it's probably accurate.
Yeah. Well, you Toloettes, how about that? You Toloettes who are listening to the show, Tiger Pal Rachel included. Some of you are married. Some of you are coming to the end of having a working, functioning relationship with your husbands and your boyfriends. because once all 3 levels of football are up and running at full speed, ladies say like, hey, I'm losing my husband for a couple of months.
Yeah.
I know my wife is happy about it. She's happy about it for the first like 3 months, 3 weeks of the season, 3-4 weeks of the season. She's like, oh, this is great. You're not asking me to do stuff.
Oh man.
Not that kind of stuff, you perverts. But no, like she gets mad at me because I put things on her honey-do list. I'm like, honey, let's go fix the gazebo this weekend, right? Like we have projects. Oh, we need to fill some of the cracks in the wood, and then we need to paint it and seal the gazebo. I'm like, yeah, let's do that this weekend. She's like, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, let's go do this thing. No, I don't want to do that either. So what is on your honey-do list, your to-do list? Or it could just be like a watch list, right? Once football starts, you're not going to be binging Game of Thrones. Once football starts, you're not going to be watching all your favorite TV shows. You're not going to have time for that trivial nonsense anymore.
And
television.
Real quick, Diesel, sorry to interrupt. Waffle Trey says Lamb was head coach at Gardner-Webb, is now the head coach at ETSU.
Interesting.
It's TRE. We were looking at the wrong Trey. It was TRE Lamb. No Y. Sorry about that. I apologize. So, football season, Diesel overlaps another season for me.
Taylor is at Virginia.
Oh, there's 2?
Trey, is Trey another son? Is another Bobby Lamb's son? I'm making
it worse. I'm sorry. I guess it is. It does say Trey is the son of Bobby. So
okay, so I didn't know he had 2 sons.
I didn't either. I learned something new today.
Yeah,
thank you, Waffle Trey. Appreciate that.
There you go.
So the worst part about you're right. It is like a time where you kind of just let that list grow, right? The worst part for me is football season overlaps with hunting season, so there's nothing that's going to get done. Like 0.
When does hunting season start?
3 weeks.
Mid-September.
Yep. September 15th. So it's you can forget me doing anything productive. If I could do it, I would work all year and then take off September, October, November.
I've got like 10 movies sitting in my watch list on like every single platform. I only pay for one of them. Don't tell big box business that like I only pay for Disney Hulu.
Yeah.
Because then I give that to my sister. She gives me their Netflix. We all share.
That's the way to do it, though.
Yeah, we all share. This stuff's too expensive.
Yeah.
No, but nobody can afford that kind of stuff. But, I've been going back and watching all the Marvel movies in order. Because, like, you remember that time? This was 10 years ago or so when Marvel could do no wrong.
No.
Every movie was great. Every single one of them was must watch. You had to go see all of them. I try to like go back and rewatch all those movies every couple of years. I don't do it every year. That's ludicrous.
Yeah.
But like I'm like there's a lot of television I got to try to cram in over the next 3 days. Once football starts, it's over, and then I'll see those guys again in January.
Dust them off in January.
Yeah.
You know what? It does feel like when football season gets here, it feels like it goes by so fast.
Yeah. Because
you don't do a lot outside. Obviously on the weekends, you still go do activities and things. It's great, like the fall weather and everything. But man, you really hone in. You really focus in on South Carolina or Clemson for an entire season. You blink. I feel that way with high school, Diesel.
And if you don't, you're going to miss it. And it's almost harder to catch up.
I'm telling you, every single year that I cover high school football here in the upstate, we wait all year for it to get here. Me and everyone, all my friends who cover it. And then all of a sudden it's gone. 10 weeks later, it just goes by so fast. I think the older you get, the faster things go by. I really do.
My wife wants me to measure and build cabinet doors for some cabinets in our kitchen. I'm like, sorry, honey, that's not getting done until February. She wants me to finish putting our bathroom back together from like a year ago when it flooded while we were out on vacation. Came back, floor was rotten, had to take some subfloor out, replace the toilet. And that means taking all the trim off of everything. It's like more than you thought you'd. She wants me to get that done. Sorry, that's not happening until like we've already lived with it for a year. Like, what's another couple of months?
True. Did you see Tolo Michael said, cram it in. My honey-do list never stops. It's like a CVS receipt. I did outkick my coverage, though, so I deserve it.
Hey, congratulations to you, Tolo Michael. Have you gotten in your upset pick yet, Tolo Michael? That's what I want to know. Have you gotten in your upset pick? If not, 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Give us your name, your game, and the spread.
Jarrett Tripp on the text line said high school football needs to go to 12 games. 10 goes by fast. It really does.
That's a short season.
It's
10
man.
weeks, though. Yeah.
10 weeks. Think about it. The entire year. 365 days, you get 10 games.
So talk about that from a perspective of just the size of the rosters. Are these rosters big enough to sustain a 12-game season, potentially plus playoffs?
They were until the high school league did the stupidest thing they could have done. Well, I don't want to say that. They did a lot of stupid things. The 8-quarter rule. In high school in South Carolina, it's the only state Diesel around, and I know we're going to run in a second, but it's the only state that does this in the Southeast. If you play on JV on Friday night, if you dress on Thursday night, rather, if you dress on Thursday night on JV, you aren't allowed to participate on Friday night. Okay. So the roster sizes used to be bigger because you could carry guys from Thursday who maybe played a couple of snaps or drives, bring on the Friday night roster, have more depth. But now the high school league says, no, if you dress out Thursday night for JV, you're not allowed to dress out Friday night for varsity, which is in my opinion, a stupid rule.
It seems at this point, Cole, and I wonder if any state's going to do it, just eliminate JV. Well, just have them all be depth for the varsity roster.
Yeah, I don't know if that would happen, but
I mean, they're not going to play anyway.
You mean on the varsity?
No, yeah. A lot of the guys that are playing JV, even the better players on JV, are probably not. I get it. It's for the younger players. It's those who still need time to develop. It's for freshmen and sophomores. I get the purpose of JV, and I'm not trying to take that away. But if you were to increase the length of the regular season to 12 games, you might have to. Or you might have to turn JV into 7-on-7.
Well, I'd get rid of that stupid rule, and that's the first thing I would do. Again, I don't like it. Scotty from BMW asked the question, Diesel, you can answer this because you know about the upset pick challenge a little more than I do. If you submitted the pick last week, can you pick one this – wait, what did he say?
If you submitted a week 0 pick, Scotty, yes.
Of course. It's a week-to-week game, man.
Yeah, it's a week-to-week game.
Yeah, it's not a one-and-done. We're not Coach Cal players here. We're not one-and-done. Every week, man, you got to submit a new one. Diesel and I did. We'll get back to ours in the last hour.
Yeah, and Scotty, if you picked a week 1 game in week 0, we wouldn't have let you do that. We would have told you to pick a week 0 game.
All right, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered joins us on the other side. Your thoughts. Get your text in for Chris. 71307. Start your text with the word fan. The Upset Picks Challenge rolls on right here on the Fan Upstate. So good to have you in. It is time to talk SEC football with Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Chris, I want your reaction. I'm going Georgia Southern over Boise State with my Upset Picks Challenge. Your instant reaction to that?
Cool, I like it. I actually saw that on the board and sort of considered it. I was really surprised to see Georgia Southern such a big dog in that game. So I like it. I like it. You know, as a man who has a soft spot for App State, I don't know how many positive things I'm allowed to say about Georgia Southern, especially with Diesel being
Not
on
if
the
you want to stay
airwaves
friends
as well,
with me, pal.
But no, I like the pick. I like it a lot.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joining us here each and every week here at 540 on Wednesdays. Chris, I'm sure everybody in the SEC is a fever pitch right now. So this is trying to trying to pick the shortest midget or the tallest guy on an NBA roster. But which SEC fan base right now, especially on the message boards, do you feel like is the most over the top, over their skis expectations, maybe a little bit out of touch right now?
Oh, it's a good question, Diesel. I feel like that's almost a rite of passage of being an SEC football fan, right? I mean, and this is the time of year, to your point. And by the way, guys, I want to say thank you for having me on. I'm super stoked to be back on the airwaves weekly with you guys. It's always a pleasure to jump on here and an honor to chop it up with you guys. But listen, we've reached the point in the preseason where I think everybody has sort of talked themselves into why their team could win 3 or 4 more games than they probably are expected to, or what they probably should expect. I will tell you guys, the one that has really jumped out to me, and I was talking to a good buddy of mine today, actually, and he was sort of giving me some insight from fall camp and the way they're feeling. And, like, the hype meter is just outrageous, is the Auburn Tigers. I mean, they're literally talking about best case scenario. They could win 10 games. I mean, they've talked themselves into, like, they can beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but that is definitely one that jumps out to me that I think, you know, when you talk to those folks, you know, their feelings from fall camp, you know, they're Peyton Thorne's making strides and the freshman wide receivers look like all world everything and the defense is going to be salty. And, like, you know, they are really, really, like, buying into the whole potentially 9 ceiling being 10 wins, right? I mean, there's a lot of fan bases you could go to that I think are really excited. Oklahoma fans, right? They're not buying into this whole narrative. They're supposed to go 6-6 or 7-5. They believe we're Oklahoma football. The SEC better get ready for us, right? We're going to go 9-3 or compete for a playoff. But so I would say those two, Auburn and Oklahoma, are probably two that I'm like the hype meter for them is really through the roof, and we'll see how it plays out, obviously, when it finally kicks off.
Chris, not to wish the season away, but when the season comes to a conclusion, in your mind, your opinion, who's the first SEC coach to get fired?
First SEC coach to get fired, you know, and it's not based off of my predictions, Cole, because I've got this team going 6-6, which I think would bring him back. But most likely, if my predictions were to be wrong, which they very well could be and probably will be, I would say Sam Pittman at Arkansas is probably the most likely. It's funny enough, I was doing a deep dive on their schedule today, and Cole, the way it sets up, I mean, if they don't generate some early momentum, they've got that matchup week 2 at Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Just a couple weeks later, obviously they play the Auburn Tigers. They play Texas A&M in that showdown at Arlington. You know, guys, they could go into the bye week sitting at 2-4 and 0-3 in conference, and you have to wonder if it's ugly through 6 games. I think Arkansas could make a move then and there. I mean, they've got Bobby Petrino on staff, who, what's so interesting about this, guys, is, you know, we've seen coaches be on the hot seat before. How often do we see a coach on the hot seat and the person the fans want as the replacement is a guy on staff? That is essentially the situation in Fayetteville right now. So I think the first coach to be fired, if I had to bet on it today, I think it is going to be Sam Pittman at Arkansas. It's just with that schedule, what the expectations are, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him to survive it.
See, Chris, we've been talking a lot of Florida, Miami over the past 24 hours, 36 hours here on the show. I'm looking at Florida and saying, man, by week number 5, there's a realistic, not a super high chance, but a realistic chance that they're sitting at 1-3 by that point. I think Miami's going to go into Ben Hill Griffin and beat them. Obviously, I think they're going to just trounce Samford. There's a huge talent gap there. But Texas A&M is probably an on par, if not slightly better team than you. And then if you get to week number 4 and you're sitting at 1-2, the question is Billy Napier losing the locker room? And I'm thinking by week number 5, which Florida has off, that Billy Napier's seat is white hot, in fuego. Do you agree?
It could be. I mean, listen, if they start the way you're predicting, then absolutely. I mean, I'll take it this, Steve. I'll take it a step further. If they start 1-3, like you just laid out, and they lose to Mississippi State, he's gone. I mean, he's gone. He's gone. I don't know if it'd be during the bye week. I don't know if it'd be during the next bye week. I don't know if they'd wait till in the season, but he will be gone. It's funny enough, man. I did a show a couple weeks ago. It's kind of a state of the program address for Florida. And, I've been one, Diesel, as we've gotten closer to kickoff, that I think Billy's going to be back next year. I think even if they go 5-7, as long as it's not just like I know this sounds weird to say a terrible 5-7, right? Are they being competitive? How does it look? I just think from what I've been told from folks down there in Gainesville, inside the building, that the people that sign the checks at Florida with the commas in them, they don't want to sign another check. They're not really interested in doing that. They will if they have to, but they don't want to. And Scott Strickland, the AD, is tied to the hip with this guy. Like, if Billy Napier's gone, he's going to be gone. You don't get a third football coaching hiring. It just doesn't happen. So I think barring a complete disaster, I think they want him back. Also, they've got a guy on the roster named DJ Lagway, and I don't believe in keeping a coach if you believe he's the wrong guy for one prospect, but like as high as they are on this kid at the quarterback position, you'd love to see that play out and at least get a look at him in Gainesville and see what he can be. But I mean, to your point, Diesel, if they start 1-3, and that Miami game means everything. I mean, we're going to be down there. I'm actually heading down to Gainesville Friday. Can't wait to get in town. It's going to be an electric atmosphere and can't wait to experience it. But this is what makes college football great. Both of those fan bases look at that game as a must win, as a should win, and whoever loses it, that coach is on the hot seat, and there's just no way around it, right? So Billy desperately needs that Miami win. But I tell you, even if you don't win that one, like you said, you're going to beat Samford. A&M becomes a huge game. You cannot lose to Mississippi State. I mean, if you lose to Mississippi State, like you said, I don't think State's going to be very good. Year one of Jeff Lebby, they've got a lot of moving pieces. You lose to Mississippi State, I think that'll be all but the nail in the coffin for Napier.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. Chris, going to play a little game here with you. Saturday evening, 7:38 is the time. Fans are walking out of Williams-Brice Stadium, not like peed off, not just ripping, not gnashing teeth, but the fans that are walking out of Williams-Brice Stadium Saturday night, the Gamecock fans, they're just not pleased. What happened during the game?
That's a good question, Cole. It's a really good question. This kind of reminds me of, because I've had that exact feeling. It was a couple of years ago, Georgia State game, week 1. You guys might recall that. South Carolina won by 21 points, but it was ugly. It was special teams induced, couldn't run the football. So probably what happened, I would say the play calling, the offensive game plan was a little bit conservative. I think Lenoris Sellers, they did not stretch the football down the field. The passing game probably did not look as good as folks hoped it would. It's either that or the offensive line struggled more than you would expect. I mean, that's, there's a couple different things here, Cole. This is a multi-layered answer, right? I think if you see issues in the line of scrimmage in any kind of way, because again, like that Georgia State game 2 years ago, South Carolina won that game by 3 touchdowns, but you know as well as I do, like when you play a smaller opponent, an inferior opponent, and you're just not quite pushing them around the way you should be, like you're having to work a little too hard, right? It's like, man, we had to kind of sweat that out a little bit more than we probably should have. So, I would say this, Cole, here's the easiest way to answer your question. South Carolina fans will be walking out of the stadium pissed off if South Carolina does not cover the spread. That's the easiest way to summarize this. Like, what specific things happened, I don't know. But if they don't cover the spread, if this is I've predicted a 27-10 game. If this is a 27-10 game, I do not think fans will be thrilled leaving the stadium. And it's just, you want something to feel good about. You want a shot in the arm. If you win that way that I'm predicting, and it's just kind of a trudge through the mud, kind of a sluggish, not necessarily sloppy, but super conservative and sort of boring. I don't think fans are going to be overly thrilled. So I think a lot of fans want to see that 38-7 kind of game, that real blowout, put your foot on their throat. I think they want to see South Carolina open it up, and if they don't, I think that could leave people leaving the stadium a little bit disgruntled on opening weekend.
All right, Chris, it's time for your first over-the-air upset pick selection. You played last week, didn't score any points. Sorry, neither did I, neither did Cole, so we're all in the same boat here. Can you give us a sense of a couple of games that you maybe considered, and then what your ultimate decision is to go with here in week one?
I want to say too, Diesel, New Mexico really let me down. I mean, they
10
had
seconds.
it. I mean, they had it.
Yeah.
10 seconds to go.
They had it and just couldn't hold on for dear life. I mean, I guess we should have gone with the Georgia Tech pick. I had FSU minus 10.5. That was a terrible decision. Thankfully, right before kickoff, I bet the under. So it was kind of a wash, but yeah, I guess that was the number to play. A couple of games I was looking at, guys, obviously Florida, Miami, going to be there in person. I've already gone on record and picked Florida to win the game, and I believe that the Florida Gators will win the game. So that's one, obviously, I've been considering. Penn State, West Virginia is wildly fascinating. I think that game's at 8.5 right now. West Virginia, the home team. That seems to be a really sexy upset pick. A lot of people are on the Mountaineers to cover the spread. A lot of people are on the Mountaineers to win straight up. I did actually see that Georgia Southern Boise State game. I thought that one was really interesting on the board. Dare I say Vandy, Virginia Tech? No, I'm kidding. I'm not going there. But
somebody did pick it.
I glanced at it for a moment. Guys, I'm going to go for my selection here. Let me go with the West Virginia Mountaineers. I'm going to go with West Virginia pulling the outright upset over Penn State in week one at home. I just said I know I'm picking Florida, but I'm going to leave that game alone because, again, I am going to be there in person. Last week, the pick that I had, it maybe kind of jinxed the team I picked. I don't want to put that on the Florida Gators this week. I don't want to be that guy that, you know what I mean? So I've already went out there and publicized my picks and picked the Florida Gators straight up. So I want to go a little bit of a different route. I don't want to pick the same game and everything I'm doing. So for you guys, give me West Virginia plus the 8.5. I think they beat Penn State straight up at home. I think that's going to be a really fun game.
Well, you have the same mind as our mutual friend Jake Crane. He also took West Virginia plus 8 over Penn State.
Diesel, are you surprised I didn't go Clemson plus 13.5?
I don't think that's a wise pick, Chris.
Yeah, I think I've actually got Georgia covering. So, no, I'm not. I'm going the other way.
All right, Chris, we appreciate you, and I hope your pick comes to fruition. Good luck and have fun this weekend, man.
Cole, Diesel, y'all are awesome. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. That's Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. The best games, the best viewing times this weekend. When should you be on the couch? We'll talk about it next.
97.7 FM in Greenville, 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, everywhere you are on the free Odyssey app. Tolo, Rick, call us back. We know that you called us right before we brought Chris Phillips on the show. We were just about to go into a guest. So, Rick, if you're listening, if you're still with us, call us back, 844-FAN-PHONE on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-326-3663.
He wanted to get in on the challenge. He said he never played before. First year Tolo, Rick.
You know, I'm not entirely sure that Rick always listens to the show. I think Rick just calls in, wants to be put on hold so that he can listen to the show while he's on hold.
That's a good point.
You know, back in the day when I was doing college radio, I used to get phone calls from the local jail asking me to play certain songs as requests. And they would call in, collect to the radio station. And in that little brief, like split second, they've got to say who it is that's calling. That's when they would make their request. So it'd be like, you are receiving a collect call from the Watauga County Corrections Facility from Metallica, Master of Puppets.
I bet that'd be great radio.
It was fantastic.
Oh, my God.
It was so good.
You talk about fascinating radio. Wow. All right, Diesel, the viewing schedule this weekend, not just Saturday, but the entire weekend starts Thursday night. We're going to tell you the best times to be in front of the old TV. Thursday night, 6 o'clock. It's not a good game, Howard, Rutgers, but it's still football. And then at 7 o'clock, Western Carolina, NC State. How about that?
Yeah, let's go to Rick. Rick, what's up, pal? How are you?
I'm doing good, man.
Good. Any more illegal cockroach races going on up there in Sugar Tit, or are you guys keeping that on the down low?
No, we closed them down. I've got a new business.
I know they closed them down, but Rick, you were advertising it. Well, we were advertising for weeks that you were doing it.
We had to shut them down completely. I've got a new business, and it's going great.
Can you talk about it or not?
If it's illegal, don't tell us about it.
Oh, yeah. And it's not illegal.
Oh, good.
I bought an old ice cream place and opened it up. And we're doing pole dance. We're doing pole dance classes. My son teaches pole. He's a great teacher, and we've got 5 or 6 students already.
Your son teaches pole dancing.
Yes, he teaches it, and he's great with it. He worked in a strip club for a long time, a male-female strip club, and he's a great pole dancer. And he teaches this class. I opened up the ice cream place too. We still got ice cream, okay?
So is this like an all-in-one?
You should just call it double scoops.
No, well, I let the Rocket Man. That's my son. The Rocket Man is the one that is the one that teaches the class. Okay, they call him the Rocket Man.
Jeez.
But
is it because he shoots up that pole really fast?
Yeah, he's great at doing that. But but I run the ice cream parlor, and he does the pole dancing. So we get them both ways.
You run the wholesome side, the wholesome side of the business.
Well, yes, I can't. But we have strip joints that will hire our graduates.
Oh.
I mean, we've had 2 graduates, and they went a couple of great.
So Rocket Man heats them up, and Rick cools them down.
Yes, we do. And the ice cream's cheap, and the pole dancing lessons are $39.95. But we have coupons going out for $3 a month.
Oh, wow!
So you can get it for $3 a month. I mean, it's wonderful.
What a deal!
What a deal! Now I've got to find out about the
upset pick challenge.
Yes, I've never done that.
Well,
I want to make a pick. Just put Rick from Greer, and I want to take Western Carolina over NC State.
Ooh.
I think it's 30 points.
Oh, Rick, you're swinging for the fences there, buddy.
I am. Well, you're supposed to, aren't you? Look.
Hey, it's a strategy. It's a bold strategy, Rick.
Ice cream joint and pole dancing place in the world.
Literally.
Maybe for good reason.
The only and the greatest.
Do you ever think there's a reason why nobody else has tried this venture?
I don't know.
No vision. Lack of vision.
We're
That's
kind
the
of
problem.
out in the middle of the boonies. I'm a mile and a half from Possum Kingdom, so that kind of throws us off. But I mean, we do pretty good.
I would
So
assume.
if you ever come to see us, take the road to Possum Kingdom, and we're a mile and a half from Possum Kingdom.
Can't miss it. The
There you
only
go.
ice cream, pole dancing.
Ice cream, pole dances. I mean,
Studio. Yeah.
yeah, you can. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, man.
Well, Rick,
Send your daughters and your mothers and your anyone. Send anyone.
we'll do our best to send the referrals that way. Rick, we appreciate the call
Thanks,
as
Rick.
always.
Hey, Rick is the only one. I guarantee Rick is going to be the only one to take Western Carolina plus 32.5 against NC State.
Only Rick.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if that pick hits?
How long do you think Rick could stay on the line with us without us having to hit the dump button?
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know that it would last.
So I'm looking at the spreads here. That is, I think, by far the biggest spread of any game anyone's picked this week. Rick from Greer took Western Carolina plus 32.5 over NC State. Panther Vol 51 took Georgia State over Georgia Tech for 20.5. And then, gosh,
Wesley on the Facebook stream, Diesel says Rick should do well with upset picks. Look at the career path he picked.
Oh man, man,
that's a classic, instant classic. Every single time Rick calls, it just turns into a instant.
It's the Rick
classic.
show.
God, it really is. I mean, we just turn our mics off and let them go.
Notre Dame Nate took Richmond over Virginia plus 19.
There's no way Western Carolina. There's no way they're beating NC State, right? There's no possible way.
Texter says, "What in the low credit score did I just hear? Pole dancing ice cream shop."
You heard it right.
Texter says, "Sounds like," I'm just going to read it because you wrote it, Texter. Okay, sounds like Joe Biden will be visiting Sugar Tit soon.
God, y'all are
Brutal.
something else.
Brutal.
All right, TV schedule, viewing schedule. What's the best times this weekend? Obviously, Thursday night football being on TV. Listen, it's football. It's gonna be fun to watch. You may, Diesel, prefer to watch NC State Western. I don't. You may prefer to turn it on SEC Network and watch Missouri Murray State. I don't. I do wish Kansas was playing a better opponent because I'm enthralled with Kansas. I really like Jalen Daniels. 8 o'clock. They're playing Lindenwood, who I've never heard of. So that one won't be close.
Are we sure that's even a D1 football program?
45-point spread, by the way, on that one.
Ouch. You
also have Thursday night, North Dakota State, Colorado, North Carolina, Minnesota, Coastal Carolina, Jacksonville State. I'm scrolling because there are a lot of games.
North Carolina, Minnesota might be the most watchable of that bunch.
I think it's North Dakota State, Colorado.
Followed by North. I mean, I think you'll get a better football game with North Carolina, Minnesota, but Colorado. I think Colorado's going to boat race them.
You think so?
Yeah.
No
week
faith.
one with everybody healthy. I think they're gonna kind of pop that North Dakota State bubble.
Now wait a minute. What is this? Bison? Is that right for North Dakota State?
Bison. Yeah. They don't like being called the Bison. They want you to call them the Bison.
Say it wrong and with a Z instead of an S. Okay,
that's what they want.
And then Colorado, I mean, those are family members, right? The Buffalo and the Bison. I mean, gotta be. 8 o'clock. I do believe Thursday night. That's probably your best game. Yeah, you're North Carolina, Minnesota Diesel. The spread's North Carolina -2. That one might be an entertaining game. Maybe there's some fireworks in that one. I don't think there will be a lot of defense in that one. But Thursday night, tomorrow night. I mean, can you believe it's here? A full schedule. 8 o'clock. You and I will be off the air in time. North Dakota State, Colorado will be the game I'm watching tomorrow night.
Tomorrow will be call in and get stuff delivered. Have it showing up to the house about 6:30. You don't have to cook anything. You don't have to leave the house to go get takeout. Have it delivered. Pay the fee. It's fine. And then just sit and binge. Just let it wash over you, would you?
That's exactly right. All right. Then we turn the page to Friday. Games beginning at 6 o'clock. Lehigh versus Army. Nah, you can have that. I'm good. 7 o'clock, Diesel, Temple, Oklahoma. Maybe you turn it on just to see what Brent Venables' Oklahoma looks like for the first quarter, right?
The spread on that game is just absurd. Looking at all the SEC games and the competition that most SEC teams are facing in week one, it's just I'm just looking at these massive spreads.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly.
Every single game except for what? Clemson, Georgia has a close spread. Is that the only one?
I think that it might be. I'll tell you on the
Virginia
Oklahoma,
Tech Vandy, a 13.5-point spread.
I don't think the Oklahoma Temple game will be worth watching from the standpoint of it being remotely close. However, I am intrigued to see what Brent Venables' Oklahoma team looks like. Again, you can't judge it off of this game because they're playing Temple. It's going to be a blowout. But I think Oklahoma, first year in the SEC, I think people will watch that. It is on ESPN. Michigan State, Florida Atlantic on Friday night. Elon Duke, Western Michigan, Wisconsin. How about Friday night late? Maybe I can watch this one. Maybe I get home from high school football. No, that won't happen. I'm in Irmo. 10:30 Diesel, TCU, Stanford. Any interest there? Stay up late?
Could be interesting. We've had a couple of people choose TCU, Stanford in the upset picks contest.
And I don't know that that's a bad pick. 9.5 points. The spread, let's see, over under 59.5. Yeah, TCU is favored by 9.5 over Stanford. I don't hate that. It wouldn't be my first choice for upset picks, but not bad games on Friday night. I mean, it's worth watching. Again, it's football. And then you wake up Saturday morning, you know what's just coming down the train right off the bat. I don't think it should be at 12. I think it should be a 4:30 game or a night game, but it is what it is. Clemson, Georgia at noon. Obviously, Diesel, most of America will be glued to their recliner/couch. Probably, I'd say by 11:45. Not much lawnmower action, I don't believe.
9 a.m. I get up to make sure that I'm there for the start of college game.
Well,
day.
most
What are you
do,
talking
but I'm
about?
saying, those with a honey-do list might have to knock it out early Saturday morning. Get your
Football's
stuff
an all-day
done.
thing.
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm just saying some women see that differently. You're in your chair though, at least by 11:45. If you can't watch college game day, Clemson, Georgia at noon, Penn State, West Virginia, at noon o'clock. Tennessee, a real tough opponent, and Chattanooga, 38.5 at 12:45. No interest there.
What fascinates me about the Saturday noon time slot, Cole, is how the hell did the 4-letter ESPN network land on airing Virginia Tech Vanderbilt on ESPN? Number one, ESPN, the mothership, right? Because you got Clemson, Georgia on ABC, Penn State, West Virginia on Fox, and then Virginia Tech Vandy on ESPN.
It's crazy.
The hell are you thinking?
How about your mullet boy at 2 o'clock?
CBS is Akron, Ohio State at 3. That's 3:30 slot.
Oklahoma State, South Dakota State, 2 o'clock. Let's see, in the 3 o'clock hour, like you said, Ohio State's going to demolish Akron. 3:30 slot. Let's look at that slot. All right, this is where it gets interesting. Texas, Colorado State, 32-point favorites are Texas. Good gosh, that's brutal. Also at 3:30, Diesel, this will be the game that all eyes are on, right? 3:30, Miami, Florida. 2.5-point favorite are the Miami Hurricanes.
The Pitchforks and Torches Bowl.
So it does work out well, Diesel, because 12 you get Clemson, Georgia. 3:30 you haven't gone anywhere, and you're still being able to watch good football all the way up, and hopefully the Clemson Georgia game's close. Then you get 3:30 Miami, Florida. So that will take you all the way up until 6, 7 o'clock.
So a good question for the Tolos is if and when Clemson, Georgia becomes an unwatchable game, what do you flip it over to watch? If it gets ugly,
at noon,
21 points.
Well, there's not a lot of other good games at noon, I don't think.
Penn State, West Virginia.
Yeah, you have
Fox.
to. Yeah, that's the only other option.
Is that the one that you go to?
Maybe you peek over there at VT Vandy. You peek at it.
No, can I interest you in Chattanooga versus Tennessee, 38.5-point spread?
That game will be out of hand, right? That game will be. Now, here's what's interesting. You'll have Miami. This is where the YouTube TV comes into play. The multiple TVs, right? You'll have Miami, Florida at 3:30. However, the Gamecock fans, they'll want to see that because that should be a good game.
Sure.
But they'll also, 4:15 SEC Network, the boys from Old Dominion squaring it up in Willie B. I think that will be a 2 TV hour, probably. Have the Miami, Florida game on.
So you have YouTube TV. You're going to probably split and be watching 4 games at a time, right?
If I was home, I would be, but I'm going to South Carolina.
Oh, that's right.
Going to watch them battle it out with Old Man.
I got to kick it old school style. I have a Roku. I don't have YouTube TV. I can't watch 4 games at a time. So I got to do the TV, laptop, and phone scenario.
Sure. You know what's fascinating? I am excited to go cover South Carolina's first game. I'm excited to see the atmosphere. I think it's going to be a packed house. However, half of me is like, man, I'm going to be super tired. There'd be nothing better just to sit on that chair and watch nothing but college football all day and never move, take a nap, wake up, you still got football on. There's nothing better. Like, I love going to games, but I would argue that watching on TV on a Saturday, man, yeah, the game day environment's fantastic, but you can just watch so much more being at home.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I'm kind of hoping that logistically it doesn't work out for me to be in Atlanta for Clemson versus Georgia.
Yeah.
You and I, we've had some off-air conversations about logistics of being able to make that road trip happen. But I think it's important to you Tolos to have somebody on the ground there, like live reporting on it from Georgia.
The company helicopter is being used.
Yeah. So since the helicopter is being used, we went down the line to the private jet, the G5.
That was used.
G5, unfortunately, is being used. So we're going to get down to one of those little Tykes cars, one of the ones you have to stick your feet out of the bottom of and actually walk it yourself. So I think that's about where we are on the list of available options to get me there.
Let's see. Going down the rest of the viewing schedule. The sun starts to go down on Saturday night. Western Kentucky is going to roll into Alabama and limp out. You do have Furman, Ole Miss at 7, which, by the way, you can hear right here on the Fan Upstate. What does the night schedule look like, Diesel? Because so far at 7 o'clock, I'm very disappointed so far. North Alabama, Memphis, Idaho, Oregon. Okay, here's 7:30. Notre Dame, A&M. Watchable game, right? Should be a good game. ABC, 7:30. So you've got 3 good ones. You've got Clemson, Georgia, that leads into Miami, Florida. Also on the side, you've got your side piece in South Carolina, Old Dominion, and then that rolls into 7:30. You have Notre Dame, A&M. Have I missed any in that late time slot? SMU, nah. Georgia Tech, nah. Let's see. James Madison, yeah. I think that's it. Weber State, Washington at 11 p.m. Saturday night. So some West Coast action over there. But I think the TV viewing schedule, Diesel, works out well for you to be able to get good games, one good game at least in every hour, hoping for some upsets along the way.
Texter gets in and says, so last week I called New Mexico as my upset and I didn't get counted. Can I screenshot text? Well, Texter, here's the problem. New Mexico lost that game. New Mexico were the underdogs against Montana State. New Mexico held the lead until 10 seconds to go, and they let Montana State score with 10 seconds to go. So, Texter, I'm sorry, we can't give you any points because the underdog lost that game. Sorry, but we appreciate the effort. Yeah, we appreciate it. Now, this particular texter didn't give their name. So, texter, hit us up with your week 1 pick. Yeah. I said they were going to lose. That's great, but that's not the contest. The contest is you're picking betting underdogs to win the game. You have to pick a betting underdog to win the game. Diesel, we had a great conversation in the 4 o'clock hour with our friend Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings. Just a fantastic interview. As always, we'll have that for you next.
You're listening to the Underground
The text line continues to buzz as the Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles just kicked off 23 minutes ago. And to the texters, the Tolos that chimed in, remember, as Diesel said once or 5 times, you've got to send your name, the game, and the amount of points in your text, 71307. Speaking of picks, when you make your picks, man, you got to look at kfordratings.com. You got to check out Kelley Ford, and we bring Kelley in right now. Kelley, it's finally here, a full slate of college football. But before we get to this week, I've got to ask you, the K Ford models, were they destroyed? Did they blow up after Georgia Tech pulled the upset on Saturday?
Hey, Cole, I am so excited this weekend. I cannot wait. It is finally here in full force. College football is back, like you said. No, it wasn't blown up, but I'll tell you, there were some surprising results this past weekend, and that includes Georgia Tech. My numbers gave an 18% chance for the Yellow Jackets to pull off the upset. We talked about that means like a 1 in 5 chance. They play the game 5 times. Georgia Tech wins it once. Well, we got that one time on Saturday in Dublin, which was awesome to see for a neutral college football fan, and I'm sure for a lot of Clemson fans in your area as well. But it wasn't just the actual upsets. It was also how teams performed. So SMU, they get the win against Nevada, but they still fall in my power ratings about 3.5 points. Nevada is upgraded even though they lose, because in the power rating world, as we've talked about previously, and we will continue to do so all year, it's not about if you win or lose. It's about how you perform relative to the model's expectation. The deserving rankings, that's all about records. But from a power rating standpoint, it's how did you perform versus expectations. And, man, the model did get a little bit of a shock, a jolt there in week 0, and I think we're going to get more this weekend.
Yeah, Kelley, it's the last week that your numbers for most of college football have to be solely predictive. We're actually going to get real actual data to go off of. You know, I know that you listen to and probably love this guy's work as much as I do. Josh Pate from the Late Kick Show, his collaboration with his Vegas partners, they still would see Florida State as a 7.5 point favorite on a neutral field against Georgia Tech, despite Georgia Tech getting it done in Dublin. I know you're not a handicapper, but do your numbers sort of bear out the same thing if you were to match Georgia Tech and Florida State up again?
So you say Josh is, and I do love Josh Pate, of course. I think every single college football fan, or certainly most do. I think his work is great. He's very objective, has a great pulse on the sport. He's been awesome to the industry. You say his numbers, and his model has about 7.5. Mine, I just ran it quickly. It's a 6.5 point spread. So yes, even though we just saw that game play out, neutral field, if we play it again, I'm still going to take Florida State. Now, I'm much less confident than I was a week ago, right? So I said an 18% chance for Georgia Tech. Now at a 6.5 point spread, you're probably looking at a 30%-ish win probability or win expectancy for that game. So, yeah, that's how predictive models work, though. It's not going to totally reverse course just because of the outcome of one game, but we certainly learned that maybe Florida State isn't as good as we thought, and maybe Georgia Tech is a little bit better than we thought, too. We're going to do that iteration over and over and over throughout the 14, 15 weeks of this season.
You talk about 1 out of 5, Kelley. How is it similar? How is that game similar, if at all, to Clemson, Georgia, in terms of Clemson's chances this Saturday?
So my numbers gave Georgia Tech an 18% chance last week. My numbers right now are giving Clemson a 15% chance. So I would say it's very, very similar with regard to the model's pregame expected performance of this Clemson and Georgia game. Now, there's a couple of things to note here. The model does not know that this is week 1, and neither one of these teams have played yet this year. So in my opinion, and I think data backs this, I think the underdog has an advantage the more time you have off. So we've had all summer for the Clemson staff to be game planning for Georgia. Now, Georgia has that too, but it usually favors the underdog when you have extended periods of time. Here's something that works against Clemson, though, is my model views this as a truly neutral site. I'm not sure it's truly going to be neutral site with this game taking place in Atlanta. It may be, but my gut tells me that Georgia should be having a little bit of a home field advantage baked in, which the model is not doing. So I've got this as an incredibly good game, 9.0 out of 10 on the watchability scale. Georgia's the best team in the country by my model. Clemson's in the top 15 yet again, as they seem to always be under Dabo. So I think it's going to be really, really fun, really, really exciting. And Clemson fans should take confidence from the Georgia Tech performance, because my model thinks pregame, at least, it's about the same win expectancy.
Kelley, put on your prediction hat right now. Not projection time, it's prediction time. How do you think your numbers will change on Clemson around 4 p.m. on Saturday?
So, yeah, I think, ideally you'd say, I don't think they're going to change at all because you think the model's got a good handle of this team. How it's actually going to turn out is Clemson right now, for me, they have the number 11 defense in the country by my numbers. On offense, they're number 21. I think it's going to be difficult after playing Georgia, who's top 5 on both sides of the ball, to really have a good understanding of the performance we see, especially if Clemson does not perform very well. I'm not saying they won't. I'm saying if they don't, I want to be very careful to not make a knee-jerk reaction and downgrade Clemson too much on either side of the ball or overall as a team, because we don't know how much better Georgia is than the rest of college football this year. And if Clemson finds a way to pull a surprise upset or certainly be very, very competitive, I think, of course, the numbers are going to look kindly on that, and Clemson's projections moving forward, even with a loss, will improve. So it's really hard to say right now. Of course, we got to know how the game's going to turn out. But either way, especially if Clemson loses the game, I don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction and condemn this Clemson team in this season, because I think it's very possible that Georgia, and maybe if you want to throw Ohio State in there, they might be, from a talent and just power rating standpoint, they might be operating on a different level than the rest of college football. So Clemson's going to get a huge test, their biggest test of the season right out of the gate, and we're going to learn a lot about the Tigers, but let's be careful to not overreact.
Kelley Ford, K Ford Ratings, joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. Kelley, we started this show today by having the topic of conversation about depth in the Core 4 conferences. So I'm going to put you on the spot. According to K Ford Ratings, when you look at power rankings, is there a model that proves us right or wrong when you talk about the depths of the 4, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC, when you talk about which one is the deepest conference? What do the K Ford Ratings have to say on that?
So my model would suggest that certainly the SEC is the deepest conference in college football. Like if you go down the list and say, look at the 8th best, 9th best, 10th best team in each of these conferences, what's their power rating? The SEC is going to be the highest power rated team at each of those levels. Again, I haven't checked this with facts, or I haven't double checked this with my numbers today, but I'm assuming based on what I've looked at here and as we know about what we know about these teams right now, it's going to be the SEC. The Big Ten is going to come in second in this analysis. And then what I think is interesting is between the ACC and the Big 12, I think the ACC has more high-end firepower. And, of course, they took a little bit of a hit with Florida State performing the way they did last week. But certainly Clemson, still Florida State. Miami's going to be up there. You can even throw a Louisville in there if you want, maybe an NC State as a dark horse. At the very, very top, when you look at the Big 12 and the ACC, I'm going to give the edge to the ACC. But where the Big 12, I think, is a little bit better than the ACC is in that depth. And since that's what we're talking about, I do think if I were to go down the list and actually look at this, number 7, number 8, number 9, in each of these conferences, I believe my numbers would tell me that it's the Big 12 that actually has the edge over the ACC. So I think the ACC has the firepower at the top and probably the better chance maybe to get 2 teams in. Of course, Florida State has hurt that chance here to get 2 teams in the playoff from that conference early on. But I think the Big 12 probably has more contenders for a spot in the playoffs because I do think they are deeper than the ACC. So I'd go SEC, Big 10, Big 12, since we're talking about depth, not top-end talent, and then the ACC fourth out of the Power 4 conferences.
Kelley Ford of K Ford Ratings joining us here on the Fan Upstate, Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. We spent some time yesterday, Kelley, doing a little thought exercise, winning the battle but losing the war. So we're thinking of which teams are likely going to win, in our minds at least, each power conference, and then who might clip them along the way. And I look at that Georgia football schedule, and I see, man, that game looming on October 19th against number 4 Texas. They will have played 3 straight, coming off of a bye, 3 straight SEC teams at that point. I know it's probably a difficult thing for the numbers to bear out, but generally, like trends-wise, what have you noticed in your time doing what it is that you do about good teams when they face long stretches in a row of no time off against really, really good teams? Do you start to see that third, fourth, fifth game in a stretch of really tough games starting to pop up as like really likely losses?
You absolutely do see that. And that's one of the things, as we've talked about, no model, including my own, can capture everything about a team or about college football. This is one of those scheduling dynamics, as I call it, that certainly has an impact on teams, and this just wear and tear week in, week out, the general fatigue that you accrue from playing top-end teams week after week after week during difficult stretches, that does wear on teams. And especially when you throw in travel, and now with the expanded footprints of most conferences, you're going to have more travel built into these schedules. That is certainly something that people need to keep an eye on, and if you're betting games, something to certainly identify and try to use to your advantage against those lines, because that is a real thing in college football. The data does support that. You know, you look at my teams who are projected to win their conferences this year, the Power Four. I've got Georgia. I've got Ohio State. I now have Clemson. If you would have asked me a week ago, I had Florida State in that position, but now Clemson has taken over from going number 2 to number 1, and then Utah in the Big 12. Each of those teams, to varying degrees, certainly Georgia, as you talked about, the number 2 most difficult schedule in the country by my numbers. Certainly all of these teams, though, within conference play especially, are going to have a stretch or potentially stretches where it's very difficult week in and week out. And we're going to get that in college football now across the board as the talent continues to get condensed into smaller and smaller numbers of power conferences. It gets more difficult to run through those conference schedules unscathed. And so that is a real thing. The data does support that. And I certainly think that each of those teams I mentioned, as well as the contenders chasing them, are all going to have to navigate that very specific point at numerous times during this year.
Kelley, your ratings give Florida State a now 20% chance of being in the college football playoff with that loss, even though they're in the ACC. Do you see that continuing to decline? Obviously, a loss would put them out, and your impact of this week's games on at-large status chart on your website shows them one above the eliminated with a loss category, still remaining in contention for Florida State.
So that CFP page on my website that you're referencing right now, that one actually gets updated on Thursday. So it has not been updated to reflect the week 0. So apologies about that. That'll be a Thursday update for me, but I can, because I was curious myself. They went from a 20-ish% in that 20% range to being at large, Florida State, that is, to now, I checked because I was curious earlier this week, it's down to about 5% is where Florida State right now has to be in at large. That doesn't mean it's a 5% chance to make the playoff, because there's still a path for them to be the AQ out of the ACC. But I'm saying from an at-large perspective, my numbers currently assign about a 5% chance for Florida State to earn that at-large bid. So, yeah, I mean, even with the expanded playoff, certainly Florida State's chances are still better than they would be in the 4-team. I mean, it'd be close to being done in the 4-team. Probably not. You know, if you still went 11-1 on the season, won the ACC as a 12-1 champ with your only loss at a neutral site week 0 to start the year, you're still probably in. Of course, Florida State fans will roll their eyes and say, yeah, we went 13-0, buddy, and didn't make it. So don't tell me 12-1 would be good enough. So I get that point too. The expanded playoff is definitely going to help them, but still, that was at this point not a great loss for Florida State. We will see. Maybe Georgia Tech ends up being a really, really good team this year, and that loss continues to look better. But right now, Florida State fans, their at-large chances are pretty low. They need to be hoping they can find their way back into that ACC race and get a shot at that AQ.
Find his website, kfordratings.com. Trust me, that website will make you smarter. It makes me smarter every single day. Kelley, we had a texter, I think it was yesterday or the day before, upset that we spent a little too much time, in his opinion, talking about why Florida State lost that game against Georgia Tech and not what Georgia Tech did to win it. So look at your look at your Georgia Tech page. What do your odds say about Georgia Tech being undefeated going into the bye, which they have on September 28th. They have one really good football team on the schedule, September 21st, on the road at Louisville. But if Georgia Tech can play the way that they played against Florida State, they could certainly be undefeated going into that week. So what do you see through the first 5 weeks of the season for Georgia Tech?
I really appreciate your long runway there, that filibustering to allow me to do the quick math over here on my end. I've got a 14% chance that Georgia Tech enters that off week in week 5 at what would be 5-0. As you said, the only game in which they're currently projected to be an underdog in that stretch is at Louisville. It's a 27% win expectancy there. You really like Georgia Tech's chances against Georgia State, of course, and VMI. The Syracuse game on the road is a little bit more of a toss-up, 56% win expectancy. But I will say that 14%, it's possible that can continue to improve if Georgia Tech plays like they just played against Florida State, against Georgia State, against Syracuse, and just moving forward, their power rating is going to climb, because what's happening with every team, once we start playing games, your preseason rating, which is just, it is what it is, that's getting phased out as games are being played, and it's getting replaced with the in-season data. So what I always try to remind people is if you are playing in season at a higher level, especially a significantly higher level as Georgia Tech did, than your preseason projection was calling for, as that gets phased out, you're going to be skyrocketing up in the power rating. It's not like once everything finds its level and then you move a little bit here or there. As preseason gets phased out, in-season comes in, if that delta is very large, whether it's positive or negative, you're going to have a lot of movement with your rating. So Georgia Tech up 3.1 points from just last week. But if they have the exact same type of performance this week against Georgia State, which you have to guard against a letdown spot, right? But if they play that way again, I expect that number to improve yet again, which is then going to make that 14% chance continue to rise and certainly be better. So if I had to really put a number on it, I'd probably say closer to about a 25% chance if I really had to guess that Georgia Tech team could be 5-0 after the Louisville game, waiting to welcome Duke to town then in week 6.
Great stuff. Fantastic. Kelley, always appreciate you taking time to join us, and we look forward to it again next Wednesday.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Just an absolutely huge day number one of week one upset picks. 53 picks and counting, Cole.
Check out DB's comment on the stream, Diesel, on the YouTube.
DB says,
look at that.
We
man.
have 92 players already in just 2 weeks of games. That's the most ever by a long shot. Last year, they had 113 total players. You Tolos, man.
Let's go.
You Tolos are getting it done.
I mean,
I
let's
love you
do
guys.
it. Let's do it. New show. I guess we're still new. March is when we started, but new show, new flavor, new audience.
That's it.
Growing show, growing Tolos.
Shout out
one day at a time.
Shout out to Philip Rollins, who got his upset pick in. He's taking West Virginia +8 over Penn State. So Philip is the Tolo that was having a little issue with picking Montana State. He correctly called the game last week. He believed that Montana State was going to beat New Mexico. The problem is New Mexico was the betting underdog, and he needed New Mexico to outright upset Montana State to get points in the game. But Philip got his picks in. Everybody remember we screenshot the spreads as of 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. So if you wait until Thursday or Friday and the point spread has moved a little bit, as they are wont to do, as these bets are starting to come in, you will get the spread that was locked in as of 3 o'clock on Wednesday. That way, somebody who waits a day or two, gets a pick in late, doesn't either gain extra points by waiting or potentially lose points by waiting a couple of days. Georgia State +20.5 versus Georgia Tech, says Rev Red.
Ooh.
So we get more of these picks.
I like it. Georgia
rolling
Tech
in as we go.
He's calling Georgia Tech to get knocked off that high chair that they're on, Diesel.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
54 picks now in. 54 picks for the first week.
Let's go.
Of the Wire to Wire Upset Picks Challenge, brought to you by Ingles. Little side note, we're going to be at Ingles not this week, obviously, not a week from today, but we're going to be at Ingles on September 11th. We're going to be at the one at Warren H. Abernathy Highway in Spartanburg, your stomping ground. Cole.
Yeah, back on the good side of town, over in the Burg.
Yeah, you Spartanburg Tolos, Wednesday, September 11th. We're going to be at your Ingles Market. Cole, there's something interesting going on at Hillcrest High School. I saw this pop up on social media today from a good friend of mine, a good friend of the show, Tyler Butler, who runs Sports and Culture, does a fantastic job covering high school sports, covering women's sports, especially at the high school level.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a situation going down at Hillcrest when it comes to photographers and videographers on the sideline. And I want to make clear that I'm not going after Hillcrest High School for the decision that they made or for the situation that they found themselves in, because we are truly in unprecedented times with the amount of content that is being created around individual players who are maybe looking to build film so they can send out to coaches and try to get picked up on get a scholarship offer. There's parents who want to be able to create content around their kids, tiger parents, helicopter parents, those who are always hovering around. And then, of course, we've got media members who are attempting to make content and build a niche out of high school sports, and they're covering games and they're carrying games on their social media platforms, Cole. But Hillcrest was in a situation, and maybe you can give us some more information on this. We've got their social media post, a reaction to what happened in week 0, Hillcrest. It seems as if there was an overabundance of credentialed media, photographers and videographers who were on the sidelines getting in the way of coaches and athletes during the game. It puts players at risk. It puts coaches at risk. It puts the videographers and photographers at risk as you got high school athletes coming at you like a missile that could knock you down. Obviously, that creates a whole lot of legal issues and potential problems there. And so their first attempt to address this was going to be to start charging a fee to gain access to sidelines, to be a photographer or a videographer. That created a lot of backlash. and they have decided that they are not going to be charging a fee. However, they are going to be increasing the qualifications, so to speak, to get a sideline credential. Can you give us a little more info on what's going on there? And obviously, are you seeing it at other schools besides just Hillcrest?
Yeah, it's a situation where there are at any given high school football stadium, and by the way, Hillcrest is not the only one addressing this issue. At any given high school football stadium on a Friday night, you'll have anywhere from 4 to 6, sometimes 7 or 8 guys, sometimes females on the sideline who have a YouTube channel that are taking video clips and that are putting together really good reels, really good content on the internet, on YouTube. And it's gotten to the point where there are a lot of these startup YouTube channels who are doing this and creating this content. And, it's a tough line to walk. I don't think anyone should have to pay. However, Hillcrest High School, now that they've backtracked from their original post, they're saying, look, you've got to be approved, which I think is the right thing to do. Obviously, you need to be approved to be on the sideline. But the reality of it is, and I know we'll run out of time. We can get back into it tomorrow. But the reality, Diesel, there was way too many people on the sideline that had cameras that were just getting in the way. And it's not happening just there. It's happening everywhere. But there are other ways to go about it than saying you're going to charge to have somebody, take pictures and video of your game.
More picks I know coming tomorrow. You Tolos, you beautiful, beautiful Tolos. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Fan Upstate.